it seems like a lot of people have all these good conversations going on, but nobody really has a focus on what's important. You know what I mean? So I try to create content to get people on board with what's going on and what's. There we go.
Yeah, I get it. It's I don't know what it's like to put together these groups. I just started on Twitter just really a week ago.
Yeah, I just docked onto Twitter too. I've been in the Facebook wars, you might call them,
Yeah, been there too.
but which was really interesting. But after Elon acquired Twitter, everything kind of got. I think everything got better for Twitter after that.
Yeah, do you know, was the Spaces thing around when Trump ran in 2016, or is this something new?
Um, Twitter's been around, but the platform operating the way you see it now, I, I've gotten onto Twitter a few times, and I've never seen the platform this well put together. So,
So, was there a Spaces where they could have group discussions the way we do it now, or is that something that Elon Musk did?
I think that was integrated at some point along the way. Like I said, I'm pretty new to the whole Twitter thing too.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to ask somebody who's been around this space for a while and figure out when they actually switched over and allowed this type of communication. I'll tell you, it's very effective.
Right. Wait, have you noticed something about all the candidates on the list? Like, I've tried to find candidates, even the ones on the list, and they're not public. Like, I don't know if some of them are doing it as research to get their candidacy on or whatever. But
Well, you realize how difficult a job it is to get through the entire process, right? I mean,
oh yeah,
and then to get out there and get heard. I actually have uh, a couple of. I'm going to have a couple of podcasts that I'll be interviewed on. I've got three of them over the next 15 days. Um, and then we're going to fire up our YouTube channel. What we want to do is we want to have discussion groups similar to this. In fact, I want my campaign to develop a Twitter space so that we can come on and specifically talk about my campaign in a space. Anyone's invited, but certainly the people who are part of my ballot access coalition and other supporters would I'll invite them in for sure.
right.
But you know, but we'll build our own space and invite others to come and join us and what I think is I found happening, and I really am pleasantly surprised by it, is that I'm getting people across the political spectrum, libertarians, MAGA people, corporate Republicans, corporate Democrats that are fed up, socialists, communists, Marxists, you name it. I'm getting people across the political spectrum coming into my campaign. And
Yeah,
so that means that my message of us getting together as the working class and viewing this thing as a class war as opposed to right versus left and recognizing that, really we need to own our major institutions. We need to control policy. We need to, and if we don't own it,
absolutely.
somebody else will, right? And I think that's starting to get through.
Right, absolutely. And it's one of the focuses I have is making the financialese of the party system independent to where it earns its contributions instead of it goes out and just gets a bunch of money from all these people that are controlling their policies. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, my platform is actually publicly funded elections. Once we own the government, we need to
Right.
change the Constitution and say the only way that campaigns can be funded is with public funds because these are
Yeah.
public institutions. And when you bring special interest in, you know who's going to be served by those institutions.
Right. Well, and then that's the downside on that is that when we get governments that turn absolute socialist and the government puts a monopoly on all the money and all the resources and everything, it messes it up for everyone.
Well, when I don't use terms like so much. I mean, I don't like to use the labels, the socialists, the
Yeah,
communists. I know they exist, but
I'm
I see
against
those
them.
terms
So
as divisive. And what I want to do is I want to talk about the issue specifically, and I really want to focus on the solutions. Like, okay, how do we solve the problem? If the problem is poverty, if the problem is homelessness, if the problem is that we got too a lack of inequality in terms of opportunity. If the
right.
problem, is perpetual wars for profit. If so let's look at the problems. If the problem is immigration, if the problem is abortion, how do we solve the problem? So I want to talk about how we solve the problem, and that's where I want the focus to go instead of all day talking about the problem. Because when you talk about the problem, you're talking about the two parties, and when you put people's focus on the two parties, they begin to believe that's the only choices they have. No, you got to paint
Yeah.
the picture of what could be.
Well, and then so you and me, I think we are the part of the solution. In fact, it takes a collective of people like us to be able to manage our country and our system. But um, ultimately, we're right at the epitome of a political crisis where not even the Democrats and Republicans don't do compliance for the FEC. They don't. They're not. They're not cracking ballots. They're just put on there by popularity. You know.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
And
they're automatics, and they put
yeah,
roadblocks in for everybody else, of course.
yeah.
You would
Well,
expect that. I mean, they don't want competition.
and that's what's messed up about this is they put everyone else through compliance. Well, okay, you put everyone else through compliance except them, right? And then all of a sudden you're in a political crisis where you don't have anybody that you can put in that office because they don't have the intelligence, the ability. you know you you just got a bunch of craziness going on.
Well, the old saying, the best way to rob a bank is to own a bank. Well, if you want to rob
Yeah.
a nation, you have to own the nation. And guess who has a monopoly on the nation?
Politicians.
Right. Well, two party politicians.
In
And really,
specific.
and two party, that's a delusion. We only have one party. It's the corporate party, and then there's everyone else. So this is a class war. It's not left versus right.
Right. Well, and that's I've always believed it was a class war, but I grew up in the streets too, so
Yeah. So I know about your background and see, so you know better than anyone because you live that, you know.
Yeah, right. Well, and me doing this whole political party thing, this is me taking a stand in the middle of a fight with corruption, from the top down. I mean, they come after me with the police and all this stuff running me over, and I got to fight back somehow, and I can't just be violent. That's not the answer for everything. But you
Well,
you
yeah,
can't just sit there and take it.
yeah.
When you run into corruption, you got to take a stand.
Well, if you go violent, it's not going to work. And the other thing that I point out is it's ludicrous to think that standing out in the streets and protesting or making demands of the corrupted party that they're going to change. They're not going to change. They love it the way it is, and they're not going to change. You
Yeah.
can yell and scream all you want. What you really need to do is you need to organize, which is why I created the Ballot Access Coalition to get not just me on the ballot, but all independents, all third parties. Because if you don't have people on the ballot to replace those guys, then they're there forever. So the
Right.
key
Well,
is
and then
class.
so I don't know if you know the intelligence aspect of the American political party or what happened with the American political party. But the American political party was established on January 6th. It was signed into existence and law on inauguration day.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't know that.
Ah, yeah, it's a shadow op. So in the shadow op, you run into the J6 committee. So under the J6 committee, 18 USC section 2383, all parties participant in the rebellion and insurrection are disqualified from seating office. In this shadow op, the fallback, the backfire would make me the lawful president of the United States by default because the other parties and everyone else is disqualified by law. There's no way around it. So in this shadow op, I came through, pulled the op, not only because I'm combating corruption, but because if I didn't pull this op, we wouldn't be able to secure our country.
Well, of course, when it comes to the law, they don't follow the law. They do whatever they want.
Yeah, well, and they do whatever they want until it does. It's all gravy till it ain't gravy no more.
Right. They own the courts, right? When everybody is corrupt, then you know, then you. So when people go and they point out that there's injustice and they go to the court system, don't forget that these parties are actually corporations, right?
Yeah.
And they're money making operations, just like any other corporation. You have to make money or corporations go out of business.
The
So the
American
parties, what
political
really
party
got
is the
their money,
exact same thing.
yeah, their
So,
money, right? And then they use their money to secure power for themselves. Uh,
yeah,
so, but they create the illusion that there's two tribes only because they want people to believe they have a choice. And that's why the mainstream media, the corporate media, the only thing they talk about are these two parties. They
right.
don't want people to even know there's another option. They're always,
Yeah,
well, the left is doing this and the right is doing that and the red and the blue, and they got their programs. Everything is
right.
geared
Well,
toward
they also don't want our black brothers to know that the two parties is a British op to take over the United States and reimpose slavery. We were trying to stop that shit, but you know what I mean. So
yeah. Well, I mean, slavery, define what that means. I mean, effectively, we're slaves now.
yeah, we are slaves now.
Yeah. So I mean, mission accomplished.
Yeah, right. Well, and that was the whole thing between the Democrats and Republicans in 1850. They deleted the American political party out of existence. The American Party completely got wiped out, and they were what they were fighting over was how they were going to go about slavery, which model they were going to use: chattel slavery or monetary slavery.
Right. Well, I mean, the bottom line for me, what you know, the working class needs to organize. It's unorganized. That's why
Yeah,
it doesn't matter whether you're libertarians, Green Party, progressive parties, whatever. You're just what you're doing is you're loading the gun, you're lifting it to your head, and you're pulling the trigger and shooting yourself in the head.
right.
Because what they do is they become tribes of their own, and they don't stand a chance of uniting the American people. Well, can't unite the working class in a class war. You're going to lose. So
Right.
when,
Well,
but they
it,
work
and
together. Yeah.
it's my experience. Sorry for interrupting you, but it's my experience that when you get so far into complexities like these, and you're running an operation, and you're running that operation based off of so many complexities, it is bound to backfire. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm looking at is when I walked into the 2020 elections as an elections official, I was looking at a total political backfire. So the the backlash of what happened in 2020,
Yeah.
we're going to see it in 2024. You're not going to have a valid because everyone's going to want to go through these ballot checks and all this other stuff, and they're going to want to look at all the credentials, and they're going to want to see it because after the last election, you know what I mean? And they're going to look at this and they're going to go, dude, none of this is even legal. None of these guys are even legally in these offices. They aren't even legally qualified.
Yeah.
And we already got enough problems because of it, which is, you're working on the BAC, and I'm glad I found you. I'm working on the tracks so that we're not on this corporate ownership level where we're being owned by the corporation. We are a corporation. We don't have to be owned by nobody, you know. We just have to own ourselves. You know what I mean? Let America own itself, you know. But um, it, you're going to see it. We're going to be in a political crisis, and there's probably about 5 candidates that I can find, and and the rest of the people that really have the intel that we need to run this operation that we call America, they're scattered, and there's not very many of them.
Yep. True enough. Yeah. Well, uh, we'll see how it goes. It's a process, but we're early in the game here, and I basically have a year to get all of the districts across the United States covered by working class people to get you know independent third party candidates on the ballot. That's
Right.
the main job. What happens to me is less important than that.
Right. Well, and then I got you all covered for all the candidates that can't get through the ballot part, because the way I went about it, creating the political party and then becoming the candidate. So I'm the party, the caucus, and the candidate. That puts me in the general elections. So I can draft all those candidates and everyone else who has the intelligence to be able to help me at the general elections. So I bypassed the nomination portion of it already. So all the ballot access, that's all scheduled. That it's required for parties to go through their caucus to get nominated that
So
way.
you know that you're going to be on the ballot in all 50 states. You know that.
Well, here's the thing: in our election system, basically, I'm supposed to be on the ballot, even if I don't go through the 50 states to crack them, and you can still elect me even if they don't put me on the ballot.
Well, as you know, all 50 states have their own rules, and they require fees. They require ballot access petitions to be signed by voters.
Right. But it's not about electing me, it's about electing a team that can handle this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
And I think finding you is probably going to be the key to keeping that team, or getting that team, and giving it some integrity.
well, I built the software platforms. Okay, so the ballot
Mm,
initiative has its own website. Um, it's got its own Facebook page, and it's going to have its own Twitter account too. So we're now spreading across platforms. Like I said, I want somebody to host, the pages, and then we're going to use our YouTube channel. We're going to be creating a lot of our own content, and we're going to have discussion groups. So I'm going to, when I start going on some of these pages, when I plan on doing a video shoot, I'm going to invite a whole bunch of people that want to participate in the discussion, and I want to basically have broad scale discussions, and we'll use some sort of live streaming platform, and we'll pull people in. I'll have a video audio engineer that'll be managing that. And basically, what I want to do is I'd like to bring people in from across the political spectrum to talk about and right. So I can manage with my own platform. I can manage that discussion and keep it on track, and not allow it to go way off course. Down these rabbit holes that take us nowhere. The
right.
holes are the ones where we're complaining about the problem, and that doesn't do anything for you. Everybody understands the problem is basically corruption. The question is, how do we end it?
Right. And that's one of the tools that I think you and me have that could work really good. I'm a good guy, but I deal with bad guys. I know how to be the bad guy, you know. Um, that trait with me allows me to really dent them. And even though you'll notice a lot of people don't respond to my posts, don't talk to me a whole lot. they know there's something up. You know what I mean? It's pretty obvious. But I think the thing is I use their shit against them, so to speak.
Uh-huh. Well,
So
no, I fall back on human psychology. No, just on a one-to-one level, one person to another. When you approach somebody and you make demands of them, like I demand that you change and you do this and you do that, and you're kind of like preaching at them. That's just the opposite of respectful discussion, right? That's and you let the arguments. You focus on the arguments and not the individual. You don't personalize it, because when you attack somebody, even if they're on the other side, the minute you do that, all they do and all of their supporters is they dig in deeper, and then they're going to block you and not listen. And so the very thing you wanted to do, which was change their mind, is the thing you're least likely to do, because you've just turned them off to listening or discussing, right? So the way you get people to
well,
is you
if you could give everyone a national security briefing on a daily basis so that they would understand what it takes to process the type of intelligence that we have to deal with, then it might be a little bit different story. But you have the whole world on the outside lost and confused trying to control what's going on the inside, and it's really hard matrix to
well
cope.
inside the bureaucracy, the dark state, so to speak.
Right.
You know, they that's where the revolving door's at, basically. I mean, the revolving door between the politics, it's also in the deep state. They're basically employees. They're driven to positions by these think tanks, and they're connected at the hip to the, well, let's say, military industrial complex, because in a capitalist state, if you can't um, use up your inventory and build new inventory, you're out of business. So if you're in the business of building missiles or bombs, you better blow the damn things up, or you're going to be out of business real quick. So we
Yeah.
have to maintain perpetual wars for profit, because if we don't, these companies are out of business, and they can't let that happen.
Right.
And
Well,
so,
and it,
what you're going to have is you got an anti-war protest of libertarians and the left progressives are going to Washington D.C. on the 19th, and they're going to bitch about the war. What they don't really understand and they won't talk about is the true cause of the war. The cause is an economic system that demands you do it. If you
yeah.
don't do it, you're out of business. And that means people are out of
Well,
work. No, you have
and
to you have
in,
to transform the system.
in particular, there's a lot of shit that I grew up at one of those think tanks, so um, I grew up involved at Rand Corporation before the corporation was finished building its school. So I dealt with Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, Anthony Fauci was my HIV prevention doctor.
Yeah.
So I know all about it. They don't just control the country; they attack the country at will, so they can create the wars that they want. You know what I mean? If you look at Fauci, he was tied into 9/11, the Fauci Jenkins connection, COVID-19, which was a celebratory attack, an occultic celebratory attack of 9/11.
Hey, we got a new listener. Why don't you invite him in and let's hear what he has to think, what his thoughts are. Or
There we go.
H
Kind of
T
new,
L R.
new to the whole thing, but
Yeah. What is that? HTL-ox? What does that mean? I don't know. Anyway,
we
interested in.
got him an invite though.
Can you just bring them in and give them speaking ability, or?
Yeah, I just sent it to him.
Oh, okay.
I guess he's got to accept if he wants to speak.
Uh-huh. So anyway, yeah. So I mean, focusing. It's very difficult to get people to get off this discussion about the problem and about the two parties and how they screw things up. I mean, I think generally a lot of people understand that we have a problem, and they understand, I think, mostly that we do not own our government. And so, the again, the basic human psychology and the way that manipulation and propaganda works is they focus you on, they know you're going to go wherever they set your focus. So if you're in a marketing business, you want to sell a new car, they're going to be flashing that new car in front of you all the time. And after a while, you start to go toward that new car. And then
Oh,
once you walk into that dealership, then they set you in it and they want you to feel what it's like, feel that behind the
yeah.
wheel, and so that,
Basic mind control. If I put parakeets in front of you all the time, you're going to be a parakeet lover.
yeah, that's exactly right. So what we have to do is we need to paint the picture of what could be, not complain about what is. When you complain about what is, you focus everybody on what is, and that's where they go. We need to paint the picture of what could be, and once they see that enough, then that's where they go. Oh,
Right.
you could have a world where everyone has health care and our families are taken care of. Oh, we could have a world without poverty. Oh, we could have a world where all of our kids are highly educated to the extent that they want, that they're all able to work, that we don't have such a thing as unemployment for anyone that wants to work. That's insane. You got an
Right.
system that can't connect. We got tons of work to do in this nation, and we
Right.
can't connect
We,
that.
we need the analysts to create the data points to help people start to learn A, sanity, B, what the problem really is, and C, what the available and plausible options for resolving that problem are. And creating that large of a data set for people to start understanding. The easiest way for me to do it was by running a psyop called the American Political Party, because the first thing it does is it conquers communism by helping you identify that you're American, and all the rest of this stuff really doesn't apply.
Well, here again, you word like communism, agree on what that actually means. So if
Yeah,
I say to you, I go to 15 people and say, define fascism for me. And you know what? I'll get 15 different answers. I can say, define communism. I'll get 15 answers. The one, the answer that you'll never get hardly is, oh, communism means that the workers themselves actually own the means of production. They don't work in an enterprise where somebody else owns it and they do the work and somebody else decides what to do with the profits. They actually are owners. So one worker, one share, one vote in directing that business, right? Now you
unionization basically. But
Yeah, well, you got an educated. Well, now the workers are actually the owners. That's what communism is. What most people think communism is the state owning it. That's state capitalism. All you've done is exchange the oligarchs for state bureaucrats.
well, and state capitalism is kind of what I call socialism, because everyone else's idea of socialism is really fucked up. And really, honestly, these are all they're trigger words. They basically are as meaningless as the many definitions we can give them for explaining
Right.
that
Well, give
things
them
are
the,
just fucked up.
the ones that give them the definitions are these two parties and the corporate media, because they want you to think, they want to convince you that that's what it is. In reality, until you accept that as truth, it isn't truth. But if they keep throwing it at you, eventually you do accept it as truth. Oh, that's what communism is, and communism is bad. Okay, I got that down. And then what do? You act in accordance with your beliefs. You believe communism bad. You immediately shut it down whenever it comes up. You don't talk about it, and you criticize the person that does and call them a Putin lover or some shit like that. A red communist Putin lover. That what you are? That type of thing. And Putin's anything but a communist, right? But it's absolutely astonishing that so people don't understand human psychology, and so they don't understand what's happening to them. They just react. So what
Right.
we have to do as a working class in a class war is we need to really uh, what we have to flash in front of them is what the possibilities are. Let them see the new world we want. Let them see what when we cooperate, collaborate, come together under our common interest, which is the health and well-being of our children and our
And
families.
that's one of the things. I work with research analysis, predictive sciences. Uh, I do a process of intelligence analytics that's called noetic science. So I use probable future as a tool to navigate my actions. Right. So in prediction, I can essentially tell you what's going to happen. What's going to happen is that we're going to end up in a political situation that's basically going to shit. And
I think we're
what
long past that, aren't we?
what we're going to end up doing is we're going to end up building a dream team, which is what's going to ultimately win. I would never win as a candidate by myself, and none of us would ever beat the system as a whole unless we assembled a dream team to run them up in the election, which is, I think, basically what we got. I got another candidate named Landingham. Like I said, I've found maybe five, but we're going to end up building a dream team, and then there's two kind of like variable directions that goes. One, one of us will qualify for Secret Service protection, and that will accelerate the Dream Team to the next level. Or two, the popularity of the Dream Team will excel above the candidates that they currently have because nobody wants to see any more of this bullshit.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about approaching it that way, really, because I don't want to be like you know, see, here's the problem. People are waiting for a Martin Luther King or a Gandhi or, or a Mandela to walk
Yeah,
forward and be that dynamic leader that's going to lead us into the, into the light. And you know what? If you're waiting for somebody else to do it, it isn't going to happen. The truth of the matter is that the only ones that can control their future are the people themselves. So that's why my basic focus is on organizing the working class, not to elevate me as a leader or a team. What I would be is a servant. My power comes not from me. My power comes from the people. So don't look to me like I'm going to transform the system. I'm not going to do it.
right. Well, and
Well,
that's I think that's what we ultimately are dealing with is a system of candidate worship. But um, how that affects psychology, how do
Well, it's
we?
how psychology works. That's why I studied cognitive and behavioral and developmental psychology, because once you understand how people work, then you can inject yourself into nature, into the way things actually work, and then be more effective. That's why I do it. You know.
Right. Well, it's like you don't want to be around somebody that's radical, has or maybe has mental health problems and be acting stupid. You want to stay to yourself, keep your distance, keep your eyes, watch your back. Like understanding psychology and behavior is, I think, fundamental on a political level as much as it is an everyday level dealing with people.
Right, right. I mean, at the end of the day, everything is one on one. So my relationship with voters is a one on one thing, an agreement that we come to. I can talk to one of them. It's like I'm here to listen to you. I can share my ideas with you. You'll listen to me. I'll share my ideas. You talk. I'm going to listen to your ideas, and we're going to bring all of us together. The collective wisdom of the American people is much greater than it is by concentrating it into a few people or one person. So what we want to do that is not being done today is we want to open the discussion. So I always say I don't have all the answers. If I had all the answers, I'd probably be God. You'd be calling me God instead of John, right? No, I don't.
And that's the thing is I don't have all of the answers. I have some very specific answers, and they're very intelligent ones at that take a great deal of support. But ultimately, it's us that have the answers for our problems because they're not independent problems; they're everyone problem.
Right.
So
So you're not voting for me because you want me to go implement my ideas. That's not representation. That's dictatorship. I got ideas. I'll tell you what the solutions are. I'm going to implement them.
right,
That's exactly the opposite of what I want to do. What I want to do is say my ideas. Now, let's say 80% right off the bat would agree that everybody to be healthy needs health care, and I mean comprehensive health care. I mean mental health care, dental health care.
right.
All the
Well,
normal.
and then so basically what we're doing is we're taking the shadow government and putting it on the front, so that it's not a shadow anymore.
Well, I'm
And
not even on the government. because the government that we have is not one that we own. It's owned by somebody else. That's the one thing I won't talk about. I don't want to talk anymore about the problem. I want to talk about. I want to paint a picture of what the solution is. And when you're looking at that shiny object in front of you, the solution, that's where you're going to go. If I talk about the problem, guess where you're going to go? It's the problem. So if you're think about when you were like 5 years old, you first learned how to ride a bike, right? You're unsure of yourself. At a cognitive level, you have to think, okay, push this pedal down, then push that pedal down, and in the steering wheel, you're thinking,
Yeah.
so you're very cognitive. You're thinking every single second about what to do. Now you're driving down and you're finally going straight, and you see a tree a little off to your left. So being unsure of yourself, what do? You focus on a tree, and guess where you go with your bike? Right to the tree. And that's the way we work as human beings. So when you focus on a problem, you go right to the problem. We need to change the focus. We need to focus people on what the possible solutions are. And when they see those, that's the shiny new car that they want to jump into and try out. So and that's where the left and the right are all wrong, because they walk in saying, I've got the answers, here's the answers, and they're pounding the desk and they're trying to change minds. You don't change minds by pounding the desk and demanding that people, come around to your point of view. What you do if you want to change a mind is you have a respectful, open discussion. You fully understand their point of view, because it could be that you missed a few things and you might just adapt. And that's why I say the collective wisdom, when we come together, we'll get not just one solution, but there'll be 3 or 4 different options. And then together we'll explore, okay, if we go down, let's say option A, here's the pros, here's the cons, here's option B, pros, cons. Now we put out a referendum to the public and say, tell me which one you want. You got all the data, all the information, pick it. And then as a representative, as a president of all the people, and that's why I ran as an independent. Only an independent can actually represent all of the people. I have no conflict of interest with parties. I have no conflict of interest with people that have money, because I don't take special interest money. I only take contributions from regular voters, right? So there's no conflict of interest. So if elected president of the United States for the very first time in history, the American people will have a president who actually serves them and their interests rather than the other way around, because that's never happened, right?
Yeah. And that's what I'm working on even though I have a party that's set up to receive those contributions, our agenda is to establish a party that works for the people, and a first works for itself and its contributions, so that it's not just getting handouts, and then B works for the people,
And that's why I love the young people. I think the young people are great because they haven't locked down into I have all the answers. They're open, they're looking. They know that there's problems, and they're trying to figure out, well, how the heck do we have a good life? I want to have a good life. I want to have a world that's not polluted, where I can be healthy and happy. And, I want to be able to make enough money to support myself, my family. I want to have some enjoyment life. I want a high quality life. That's what they all want. They don't know how to get there, but see, some of the older people, and some of the problem with the baby boomers, guys my age, is they think they know so much. I've lived this long, I know everything. Just listen to me. I got all the answers. That's bullshit. It's total bullshit, right? It's
yeah.
yeah, you experience, and that's valuable, and that'd be a good contribution. But you don't have all the answers. There's always more than one way to skin the cat.
Right. Well, and they like the government, the executive branch, and what we would call the shadow government. Ultimately, what their job is to be the steering wheel on that car. So
I mean, we literally.
even though the president is assigned to driving it, it's their job to make sure that the priorities come out straight, so that when you're looking at that tree, the car don't, or the bike don't turn into a wreck.
Well,
And
the American people, if they chose to, they could say, if you got 80% of the people, let's say the voting system, the election system's rigged, and they know it's rigged, and so they say, yeah, we want an independent president. They could completely ignore the two parties. They could just sideline them. I'm not even looking to you. I'm not listening to you. We've got a real president. He isn't in the White House, but he represents us, right?
well, and that's ultimately that's my psyop. I ran the first time I ran a psyop for political parties. I almost got Ron Paul elected, but because me being involved in think tanks, research, and shadow shit, I try to stay out of the public's eye because they don't let you know that the type of shit I go through happens. You know what I mean? They don't let you know that this guy's doctor just went and created a bio weapon and unleashed it in China. You know what I mean? So I get the most interesting take on things that other people don't get. But uh,
The very first handout I did it has a picture. It's a flower in a flower pot. And the flower pot at the very base, it's got a base. You know how a flower pot looks. It has a base that's a little bit broader, and then it's a funnel, upside down funnel, right? And then the dirt and the plant. So at the very base of the flower pot, it says USA Constitution, and then the next three levels on that flower pot: judicial branch, Congress, executive branch, right? And then at the very top, sitting on top of it, is the presidency because he's supposed to, lead the nation. And then the stem going up to the flower, and the flower's got several petals, but the stem goes up that connects the president to the needs of the people are the voters. So the stem is the voters. At the center of the flower, where all the seeds are, family, health, and well-being, and then surrounding all the petals are justice, education, healthcare, foreign policy, environment, and economy. So I said, John, for president 2024, independent, leadership that will put our families first, right? Make government work for our families, remove special interest funding from the election process, unite our citizens around our families' interest, and place families at the very top of the national agenda. That's really very simple, you know. It's very, very simple. Now you start getting into details like how you're going to do that. Then that's where we have to have a deeper discussion. But that's essentially, so that's the vision for
well,
for
and I have a very deep plan of how to do that in the most simple way. It gets complicated, but when you're dealing with the war on poverty, you're dealing with a class war. You got to look at where the money's being distributed, and ultimately, we got 5 to 9 trillion going to a war on poverty, and only 800 billion of it's going into the people's pockets. So we need to increase how much of that's going to the people's pockets. We don't need as much money in the police departments or the bureaus or the agencies as we do the people's pockets at this point. And if we could fix that,
yeah,
that would solve almost all of our initial problems.
yeah. Well, well the the World Economic Forum, they have a different idea. They're gonna have their great reset. They're gonna control all the money. It'll be a digital currency, and in order for you to eat, you're gonna you go to the store, you buy something, you'll have a digital wallet, and they can either allow you to buy it or they can block you from buying it. So it's going to be total control. What they
Well,
say,
on two
they,
sides, the Democrats want to digitize it, and then the Republicans want to take the money away from you so that you're not allowed to have it anymore. And so basically, what they
so
want to do is they want to bankrupt the poor,
right.
the
Well,
rich, and the corporation in the process.
Well, you
Not
remember
just,
there was a time people had gold, and what did the government do? They took all the gold, so it's illegal for you to have gold. They took it all, right? And that's going to happen now. A lot of people think, "Oh, I'm going to protect myself. I'm going to invest in gold." Hey, you don't think these guys with their armies aren't going to walk in and say, and their police force, their police state, and say that gold is now illegal. It's mine. Give it to me. What we have is a system with digital currency, and you'll rent everything. You'll own nothing and be happy. Is what they came right out and publicly say it. You're going to own nothing and be happy. Oh, really? you know,
that's basically what it comes down to with the Democrats and Republicans is the way their platform's set up is you're going to have absolutely nothing, not even food to eat, and you're going to love it, and that's what they think.
Yep, that's exactly what they think. Well, it's not what they think; it's what the owners think. And when you say they, there really isn't Democrats and Republicans. That's an illusion. There's only one party, and like I say, there isn't a hair's breadth between them and the oligarchy. They're owned. There's, light can't even get separated, right? You can't even get a beam of light going through between those two. It's one entity. What you have is an oligarchy, and the government is an extension. And so the
I was
executive.
thinking about that when Pelosi was saying that shit
Right.
about oligarchy. And I'm like, the difference between them and us is they have one oligarch and we got like 50 of them.
That's the only difference. Yeah. Oh, it's a small group, not 50. I mean, when you look globally, there's like 8 guys that have own half the wealth in the globe. We got 8 billion people, and they own half the wealth. 8 people, 8 individuals. Imagine that. Oh, we got Walton. You can invite him in to speak. I always like listening to Walt.
Yeah, I was just getting walked up in there. How you doing, Walt?
Yeah, maybe Walt does not ready to talk yet. Um,
But yeah, I think where you and me are as far as the conversation is where do laws policies really, what laws and policies can we touch down on? And I think doing a welfare reform is what we need to do in order to get America straightened out, is do a welfare reform that reflects the leaky faucet in our taxes.
well, until we own the government, we're not doing any reforms. Remember, we have no power.
All right.
We have to own our government, which means, and you don't expect the oligarchs to just hand it to us, do you? They're not. You can make all the demands you want. You can march in the streets. You can scream and make demands of them. Them and their supporters, the people that make money off the system, they're going to just turn you off. No, that's the way we change minds is we go right to the people and we let them know how we're connected. We don't ask them to change. We just take power. So we're going to take and own our government. That's what we're going to do.
John, it's always
That's kind of my view on it is you don't get to being the boss by asking people to be the boss. You have to step up and just start being the boss first.
That's right.
hello there, John. It's sorry I had trouble getting in. My thumb is too big, and I wanted to thank the host for being so kind to have the space. It's always a qualitative arrangement, and I'm you're a qualitative person, John, and there should be more people like you.
Well, hey, you know what? How's I guess I should ask you first. How's that great country to our north? That big, massive landmass up there.
Well, the people are warm. What's happening right now politically, it's wonderful. Like, I mean, the weather's beautiful. Everything up here. You know, I'm a proud Canadian, but I'm even a prouder North American. So it's wonderful. The one thing that I noticed, and I don't want to hijack this conversation because I love listening to you guys. It's the one thing I forgot to say last time when we talked about. I think the problem that we have with parties right now, and I'm seeing that up here, is that we don't have parties up here anymore. And I can't speak to the American side of things, but everything is so centrist that we've lost conservatism and the right and the left.
Well, do you think they're actually? Do you think that's something that they've contrived when they talk about right and left? Don't you see this as more like those that have everything and then the rest that don't? I mean, so a very tiny group actually own it. I uh, I was saying earlier, and I don't know if you were here, but there's a hair's breadth between the oligarchs, the ownership class, and the political parties. You can't even get a beam of light between them. It's really one entity, and it serves their interest. Well, going that in the class wars, they divide us again.
Yeah, I don't understand. I'm actually in an area where there's, here I am. I'm the internet guy, and I'm usually in areas where there is no internet and no cellular coverage because one of my divisions actually builds actual cell towers and puts in fiber into the ground. So, and that's how we're building our cloud up here for, we're building a private cloud here where people are recognizing that that their data is very important to them. So they got to know where it is. Right. And I'm sorry that I'm repeating myself, but I don't want to talk about me. I want to talk about the kahunas that you have. It takes a lot of, you're a brave man to do what you're doing.
I've heard people say I'm an insane man for trying to do what I'm doing, and my normal typical response is absolutely, certifiably so. You have to be insane to try
Well,
this.
no, but
Uh,
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, is the government in Canada, uh, since it's taken a centrist position, is it serving the will and interest of the people though?
Well, no, the government in Canada, uh,
Because that's the survival post of a centrist government. A centrist government can never survive if it doesn't serve the will and interest of its people.
well, okay, I agree with what you're saying, but what's actually happening is another thing, right? You're right. Theoretically, we're both right, but the part that makes me bang my head against the wall is that's just not what's happening. What's happening is a few get what they want, and the majority is believing that it's a good thing for everybody, right? And I guess going back to John's situation, I think you know I think when somebody rolls around and calls me, I've been called crazy, I've been called insane, I've been called a number of different things for the projects that I've been on, and I sat on a lot of different task force and commissions and boards that people accused me of that. And, I was always the seventh guy that would, because people are so hungry for unanimity, or everything has to be unanimous, right? And I'm not a unanimous guy unless it makes sense to be. So, and I don't vote. People really have to take a look at their vote and how powerful one vote is. And and I think what's happened is. Uh, People today are exhausted with the whole process and the situation and the position that the world's in right now, right? When you talk to anybody, people are just overwhelmed, and it doesn't make them bad. That doesn't make them whatever. They're just particularly overwhelmed. I participated in two elections, up here. Just it was kind of my bucket list thing, and I was asked to run both times, and I came in second to last and last. And the irony was that my platform was that the rural areas should be looking at getting water, they should be getting natural gas for their greenhouses, the water and the natural gas for their, for the farming and the greenhouses, and to heat the greenhouses, and internet to make to make things intelligent from the barn to the farm, to the farm, from the farm to the barn, right? So, and I came in last with that platform. And the problem that we have is that we have incumbiitis. So basically, people vote for the name, they don't vote for the issues. The one thing that I have a lot of respect for Jon is that he's looking at, he's getting his issues. He's dealing with issues where the other people that are going in, it's all, what color you're at and how many people are going to follow, the party or the color. And the issues are really secondary or tertiary in what what's involved in the process, the democratic process.
Yeah, I deal with a lot of issues myself, but I think the type of stuff that I deal with is more along the lines of taboo as far as most people are concerned. Um, historically, they call me the spy of Venice. I was a homeless kid that grew up in Los Angeles, and Anthony Fauci was my doctor, and I ran a guerrilla operation against him, which was why he went to Wuhan, China, was because we didn't give him nowhere safe to go.
Well,
So he went to defected to another country because we were after his ass. He tried to give us HIV. So I kind of grew up in these think tanks in this, dark, shadowy, you know, shit that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and all the rest of these guys were caught up in. But, me being from the street, we didn't get along too well, and I got a different take. You know what I mean? So,
well, hey, listen, it
like,
takes us uh, the grassroots. You know, I've been I've been on
right. Well,
I've been on my ass many a times
and
on
that's
on
what
the
it is.
street, so I get where you're coming from.
Well, like Ukraine,
No,
when the Democrats and Republicans wouldn't go to Ukraine, wouldn't help Ukraine, we ran a shadow op and we got people into Ukraine on the ground in Ukraine helping Ukraine when no one else would because fuck Democrats and Republicans were trying to make us look bad. And so we pulled an op out from under them. And of course, it wasn't me alone, it was the American Party Network in general, you know. But that's the kind of stuff that I end up involved in. And so like the stuff with the balloons that are getting shot down, you know, me being a high profile influencer, I start talking about, you know, DEFCON 2, and all of a sudden they're shooting down 10 and 15 of these balloons that they didn't know were there.
well,
You
you
know
know
what I
what's
mean?
scary about the whole thing is that when you're looking at, I don't know, I don't know if we're ever, I mean, I'm in the satellite side of things. So if there's a satellite that's kind of wandering and out of control, NORAD's like right on top of it. We used to be one of the locations that everybody used as a triangulation. We were a telemetry and monitoring and control. Our knock was capable of controlling satellites. So, and until this day, we still have those type of abilities. So you kind of wonder about, you know, where these things have been there for quite some time and nobody really took much interest in them. Everybody thought well, it's got to be a weather thing or it's got to be whatever, right? And then to be fair to the NORAD guys, there's only, their database is meant for something larger than a school bus, right? It's not necessarily I don't know how big these things are. I think they're the size of what, a car or something like that they were saying. So, and or they're even smaller than that, right? They're the size of a microwave, maybe. So,
Well, intel on our end suggests that China and Russia have been flying balloons over as part of these secret agreements that they have with the World Economic Forum, and people that are running our government, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, you know, Russia and China have these agreements with these guys behind the scenes, and they allow these balloons to come through because they've defected to, you know, enemy countries that have no goodwill towards us at all.
Typically these are the kinds of discussions I kind of want to avoid because I have to reach the American people. And when you think about the American people, the reality is most of them live in neighborhoods. It's suburban areas. I mean, well, of course, they're centered in cities. You have people in the cities. That's where the masses are. But the cities are extended. They're metropolises, and so there's a whole lot of middle class housewives out there. You start going down the rabbit hole of psyops and all that, you completely lose them. They don't have a clue as to where you're at. So I have to maintain my focus on the issues that relate to the health and well-being of their family and their children. That's what they can identify with, and that's where I need to
Right.
avoid these diversionary and ancillary. Do they really care about the balloons? I mean, to me, the whole balloon thing, we've been spying on each other forever, ever, and everybody knows it. This is nothing new. So it's like, oh wow, the United States has been attacked by the balloons. I'm so traumatized, I can't go to a birthday party anymore. I'm afraid, and I'm afraid of clowns too. It's like hilarious. It's almost ridiculous. It's a diversion, and and so that's what the news cycle does. It keeps diverting the attention of people away from the major issues that impact their lives directly.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think psyop seems to be the only effective tool to get other people to understand things sometimes. But it, and I like where you come from. You come from a really good stance, and so do I. But it's the ultimately, and this is what I think about the whole dream thing I'm talking about. It takes we have to clone ourselves, and each one of us has to have a different personality to work on different stuff, because we have to be able to work on all that stuff at the same time. So it's not so much, and I agree with you, it's not so much the we want to avoid psyops and intelligence and analytic conversation. We do want to stick to the point, which is taking care of the American people. But ultimately, I think it's going to take a collective of analysts, a collective of people that are able to do what you and me and Walt here have done, and maybe even HTLOX. He may be a key role player one day in life and keeping everybody alive, you know, and keeping our country strong. But for sure, uh, our number one priority does always have to be taking care of the American people and making sure them and their families are safe. It, it's consistent with what I believe, that government should be a two-pronged fork. And they kind of touched down on it when they did the omnibus. The government is supposed to be a welfare and security state. They're supposed to take care of your welfare and your security. That's their only priorities. And they do both of them horribly.
Well, when you say the government, remember that's really the people pulling the strings.
Correct.
We don't have a government. If we had a government, it would take care of us. We don't have one. You have to own it if you're going to have one.
Yeah, no, we have a corporation, and I think that's our problem. Is that the corporations that we have, they they don't represent the true fact of the formula. They represent two of three parts of the formula. There's the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and they represent that very well, but they don't represent the executive branch at all. In fact, they try to tear it down because having a true government goes against their interests. So putting like the American political party in the White House, that would give you a true government, and they would not like that.
Right. Well, I find when I go on these Twitter spaces, or even if I'm on Facebook, what you get is you get it locked into these bubbles where you have political junkies. They want to go down those rabbit holes. They really study it. They go in depth. But that's not where most of the American people are at. And although I like coming here to garner some support and to bring people on board and help spread the word, I can't spend too much time doing it, going down the rabbit hole. I have to reach out to those middle class people who they know there's a problem, they can't put their finger on it, and they need to know there's another answer out there. And those are the ones I have to reach. So I need to stay really focused on the health and well being of their families. That's what everybody really cares about. That's what mothers really want. They want their kids to have a good future, and that's I think most of them know that that's very questionable. My daughter has three young ones that are, well, one is in college now, one is going to college next year, and the third one will be going to university sometime after that. Well, the one going to Michigan State, that's 30 grand a year. That's for one per year. So even a 4-year degree, and there's no guarantee after that 4-year degree that they'll get a decent job and have a decent life. There's no guarantees that come with that. So she could invest essentially 120 per kid, and she's got 3 kids, so that's 240, 360. That's just a bachelor's degree. She herself has a master's degree in health, and my son has a PhD. So the cost of education, you have to wonder. So when you start, I had a serious conversation with her. If you're thinking about the health and well-being and the and your child's future, um, you know, it might be that you'd be better off buying a small family farm with that money, being able to grow good, nutritious food for the family. And maybe if you're going to do anything outside of that, go into a business where you're offering really good food at a low price, healthy food at a low price. So, as the economy tightens up, and we know over the next 2 or 3 years, we're in a bear market. You'll have spikes that go up and down, but generally the trend is going to be down. And with the dollar collapsing on a world economy, and it will, it's going to really change life for the American people. So American people are going to be looking for value. And so if having a fast food,
Well,
uh,
I do need to figure out how to market my agenda. So I have an agenda to pay off the national debt in order to prevent inflation from going out of control. And in that um, same swoop, I want to do a welfare reform package at the same time. And I've managed to figure out how to do it legally and legislatively, but I haven't figured out how to market it where so that people will understand that this is what I'm trying to do, or what we were trying to do, if you so choose to be on board. But
yeah, well, you have to recognize that, when you talk about inflation, okay, so you get the official, the you go on CNBC, any of the financial, they're going to give you the party line, the classic capitalist, oh, well, it's the debt that's causing the inflation. Hey, you know what inflation is? Inflation is raising prices. And you know who sets prices? Employers. And you know who owns the corporations? The employers. And that comes down to, when it comes to controlling interest, you got about 6 people in the United States that have controlling interest of every major corporation, every major industry, and every major institution. So if we have inflation, it's not because we have debt. That sidelines you. That has you looking to the left when the answer is really right in front of you. The fact of the matter is, employers raise prices. That's how you get inflation. Inflation is prices ballooning, right? That's what it is. And you have to say, who does it? Who makes that decision? So
it's a two-pronged fork. That is what we call transitory inflation, or inflation that we can basically put a stop to. Like, no, you can't jack up the prices like that. The other form of inflation, and I think it's the form that we're seeing now, is when the debt goes so high, that the interest goes so high, that the debt and interest will only ever continue to go higher. And as it does so, inflation rises with it, no matter what you do. And if you don't put a stop to that matrix and bring that debt down, like we did in 1945 to 1975, then you end up with a collapsed economy. And that's what we're seeing in 191 other countries led by the Democrats and Republicans.
Well, don't forget that they control the debt, and here's how they do it. So basically, what the billionaire class and this owner class I was telling you about, what they do is they own a political system. So they write the laws for them in the think tanks. They hand the legislation to the politicians they've already bought off, and they say pass it. And what it always amounts to is lower my taxes, so I don't pay money in taxes. So now the government doesn't have money in taxes, and they complain, oh, we don't have enough money. We have to cut services. So what the billionaires say, hey, no problem. No problem. I'm going to lend you the money. All that money you saved me on my tax, I'm going to lend it to you so you can pay back the principal plus the interest. So the debt is also something. So not only do they raise prices, they debt, and they do it on purpose. So to think that there's some magic woo-woo in the sky, the hand of God in the market doing any of this, total BS. It's completely contrived, and people buy it because they're not educated enough to know any better. This is all controlled by 6 people in the United States and 8 people globally. So basically, when you think about the oligarchy, a lot of people think about the U.S. or the Russian oligarchy. Actually, it's global. You got just a small number, a small group of guys that control it all.
Yep.
It's centered in the United States.
Honestly, I agree with you, and I think what we have to do though is we have to approach inflation on both fronts. Which there, the Biden administration is squashing down on price hikes here and there, but which basically so they're addressing transitory inflation, but the inflation that we're seeing that's really hurting everyone is the further up that national debt to GDP ratio goes, the inflation just goes spikes up with it. And if you look at the futures for national debt, it's expected to just go straight through the roof.
Well, they create the narrative and they run it through the corporate media day after day, and they have the people convinced that inflation is the issue. What I want to do is educate people why that inflation is the issue, not that it is an issue
Exactly.
when prices go up, right? Well, I'm not going
Both
to
corporately and governmentally,
yeah,
it's an issue. So,
I'm not going to go down to all these different rabbit holes and these diversions that are created by the party system, which is really one party. Like I said, it's all owned. But I'm not going to go down the diversions that they create. I'm going right to the housewives and the fathers. I'm going to say, do you want a good future for your children? Do you like going down the street and seeing all these guys with signs, please feed me? Give me a buck. You see veterans that aren't getting health care. You see all this stuff. You want that kind of society? I want to talk to them about the impact of all this stuff. I don't really care about how we do it. I know how it's all done. It's done by the owners.
and disabled people who are living on income so low they can't even afford rent or
Exactly. Yeah,
mobility device or a medical device or
right,
utility or I mean they can't even afford eight
right.
hundred dollars a month.
Yeah, and our kids aren't going to be able to afford houses. I stopped and had a glass of wine at a local bar
They're gonna work their whole
yesterday.
lives, get a pension stolen, and have to live off of $800 a month.
Yeah,
You know?
talked to the bartender and get to know him a little bit. Oh, where do you live? He says, oh, I live up the street. I said, do you own or do you rent? He said, I rent. Now here's a single guy. He doesn't have a wife or kids. And I said, how much are you paying? $1,300 a month. $1,300 a month for one guy. Wow. For a bartender, how the hell can you afford that? That doesn't include your utilities, that all that other stuff that you get. So, basically, but the bottom line is, don't be. I can't be diverted to go down all these rabbit holes. I have to go right to where the meat's at. You want a secure future for your kids. You want them to have a high quality life. Yes. Okay. Here's how we do it. I have to focus them on that shiny new vision, for them to get it. Just the way they sell those shiny new cars, they flash them on a TV and they keep flashing them on a TV, and then they put supermodels next to them, and you go, "Wow, if I own that car, I'd probably be dating that supermodel right there." They
Right.
get you interested, and they keep flashing it over and over and over, and then eventually it gets you to walk into that dealer's room. They set you in it. They let you test drive it, and they say, "Doesn't that feel good?" And you go, "Yeah, that feels good." "Oh, good. It's only $500 a month, and you can have that." "Yeah, you can afford it. I'm going to give you credit."
Yeah.
And,
Right.
and the kid's flipping burgers at McDonald's.
And
But
can't afford the credit. Yeah. I
I
know.
think you gentlemen nailed it. I think we're being manipulated or over manipulated, all of us.
Boy.
That's right.
Although
I'm driving by a billboard, and I'm seeing the billboard with the provincial emblem on it in Canada, and this advertisement is brought to you by the government of Ontario.
Yes. Thank the
Well,
government. Thank the
yeah,
government.
the
they
government of Ontario, where does the government of Ontario get their money from? The taxpayer of Ontario. That's who paid for the billboard, not the
That's
government of Ontario.
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Over there in Ontario, you can't even buy a beer without going into a state-controlled facility. You don't have party stores.
Yeah, well, John, you nailed it. We're wound pretty tight when it comes to even the cannabis right now federally is unbelievable. I mean, I don't participate. Actually, I don't participate in much of anything. I do have a nice glass of wine once in a while, so you don't see me much at the liquor stores. But yeah, you can't. But we're being manipulated. That's the
Right.
problem. It's
Right. So you know what? Here's the point. The government, or let's say the president. Oh, look what I did for you! I made that stock market go up. I gave you tax breaks. I did this. I did that. Guess what? They didn't do anything. Number one, their owners did. But even if they did, if they can give it, guess what? They can take it. So
Mhm.
that's the problem. We don't own it. It isn't theirs to give. It's ours that they're giving. They tell us they're giving. I'm giving you something back from what you've all your hard work and contribution. Look at the crumbs I'm throwing to you guys. You should be happy. Now, and then they're going to point not to what their accomplishments are. Most of the time, I'm telling you what the other guy, the other supposed team, as if there was another team. Oh, that other team over there. Look what they're planning on doing. They're going to take all your Social Security. They're going to take your retirement income. They're going to leave you so poor. So they focus you. They're diverting your attention. It's the old con game. Hey, you know what? They wave a shiny object in front of you, so you turn to the right, and while you turn to the right, they got their left hand going into your back pocket.
Yeah.
And
Look
that's
at
the American political party agenda. The primary bill that we want to address is called the USA Act, the Unified Social Assistance Act. And what it does is it breaks down the entire 501 system and redistributes the money from the 501 system to the pockets of the American people by increasing basic welfare subsidies that actually goes to them. So by upping Social Security to 16, 23, and 32, upping food stamps and cash aid so that there's a ladder up. You
Every,
know what I mean?
yeah, everything you're saying there is absolutely true, and I absolutely agree with you, and that's a fact. But for the average American citizen, the average housewife, you start talking to them like that, you know what happens? Their eyes glaze over, and they got this blank stare on their face because they don't have a clue as to what you're talking about. So from the perspective of a political candidate who's trying to change the system, the last thing I want to do is talk about details. What I want to focus them on
Right.
is that they could have the life that their children could have. I
Right.
need to focus there, and that's what I ask others to do. Don't take them down the rabbit holes. They don't get it. It's
Right.
like they don't get.
Well, I think that's where working with you is going to come in handy because I think there's always the guy that knows how to get down into the rabbit hole.
Well, yeah, you're going to find them in these chat rooms because everybody here is a political junkie.
Right.
They like to go down rabbit holes, and look how smart I am. Look, I know all the rabbit holes to go down. Yeah, that's great, and I talk about it because I understand it too. I've studied it, but I can't.
Well,
I can't
in,
be.
in
Yeah.
this particular rabbit hole, and this might not be something that we talk about for everybody all the time, or something that we're advertising per se, but when we condense this 501 tax column
Yeah.
and redistribute the wealth, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's 5.2 to 5.8 in 501 nonprofits. Plus, when you add in the omnibus, it puts another 1.7 trillion on top of that. But um, from that, it only takes 2.8 or so $billion or $1 trillion to revamp our entire welfare system. There's another 2.8 trillion on top of that, 3 trillion on top of that we could be using to reconcile the national debt, pay off the national debt, bring down inflation at the same time. So when we do this reform, there's going to be a $3 trillion overhead surplus in our budget
Yeah. Well,
by diverting
right.
501 tax contributions to the IRS to pay
But
for our partial universal basic welfare system.
yeah,
So
for half of the American public, if you talk to any housewife and you tell her what you just told me, I totally understand everything you said, and I agree with everything you said. But here's the way I say it: you have
yeah, you just can't pitch it to them
you
because they're not gonna want to deal
Well,
with all.
yeah,
They
right.
here, John,
want you to do it for them.
to your credit, the problem that we have with anybody right now in North America is that we spend, that rabbit hole you're talking about. Everybody has got a problem for every solution. And that's what I'm hearing from everybody. When I was running up here during those two elections, and I apologize, I got kicked out for some reason, and I had to get back in. But so we people are focusing on the problem, not the solution, and they're making the problem part of the solution, and that's the problem today.
Right.
What you guys are saying is perfect. I wish we had the power to do this.
And that's the beauty of this rabbit hole is the USA Act is the solution to a
Yeah,
whole bunch of those problems in one whack. That's the solution to our welfare crisis, our housing crisis, our inflation crisis. You know, it's an address to all of these problems.
Yeah, but remember now, so gentlemen, uh, here's how I present it. So messaging becomes important when you're a candidate. You have to get the message, and you have to make it clear, and you have to go to the people where they're at. So now you got people that very well know. Well, if I were going to talk about a surplus and lowering debt, here's the way I would do it. Hey, we've got all of France, Germany, the Netherlands, and Japan. They provide health care from before birth all the way through the lifespan for 100% of their population. And guess what? Based on every study that's ever been done on objective healthcare outcomes, they're always in the top 5. So they do it for $6,000. Now, the United States has 30 million people that have no health care whatsoever, and another 60 that can't afford to use the health care they have or are afraid to go to the doctor because they can't afford the copays and all the other nonsense. So we $12,000 per person, and we rate the very lowest in the industrialized world on objective health care outcomes based on every study. So let me get this straight. They do it for half the price and they have the best outcomes. We do it for twice the price and they have the worst. So basically, we owe them what we would do over one decade. Each and every decade, we would save $18 trillion because we have 300 million people. Let's say, rounding it out, we actually have 332 according to the last census. But 300 million people times the difference between the 12,000 per annum that our per capita cost of the United States and the 6,000 that they spend, that's $6,000. 300 million times $6,000 times 10 years, $18 trillion just by copying them. Okay. So now you got $18 trillion you didn't have before. And we take that and we start investing in our families and our infrastructure. What would our world look like then? So that's the way I present. So I don't go with the numbers. If I start talking about
And
numbers,
I'm with you on that with the USA Act. So, because if we only paid the interest on the national debt or made little payments, we wouldn't be able to go anywhere. So, under the USA Act, we'll be paying in so much that we can we can tell them as part of the deal of repaying this debt that they have to take the interest money and put it to work in the form of directed investment. So that's 800 billion to 1.4 trillion out of three and a half trillion every year that's going to directed investments. We need to rebuild our medical system
well,
bad.
I'm not even sure we have to repay the debt because you have to ask yourself, well, who's all that debt to? Who owns the debt? Right? Maybe we need to restructure our debt.
Yeah, well,
I'll tell you this.
that
Here's
would
the fact. Here's
that
the
would
fact
be
about debt.
that's
In
part of
3 years,
reconciliation. Yeah.
we're going to be spending $800 billion a year on the interest of the debt. In 3 years, $800 billion a year is going off of our revenues to pay the interest on the debt.
Right. When it's going up. But if we pay, say we pay 2.8 trillion, so they get paid $2 trillion down off the debt. And part of that agreement is they take the interest portion and use it for directed investment to start rebuilding our infrastructure, our cities,
Hey,
or
I've got
medical
an idea.
facilities.
I got a better idea. Let's just tell them, we own the government. We just tell them we just decided to cancel the debt. All you people that we own money to, I'm sorry, you're not going to get it. We are going to spend our money instead of on the debt. We're going to spend it on our families and on our infrastructure. Sorry, guys.
Well, that's how we would do it. But for a debtor or creditor to just have that kind of debt canceled is a bad thing for
You're talking
everyone.
Scott.
And then
You're talking
understand
about six
who
guys.
that debt is owed to. $27 trillion is owed to us, you, me, the American people, and the American economy. So that's $27 trillion the government owes us. And so if you say, okay, we're just going to cancel this debt, all of a sudden the American people are out $27 trillion.
No, I'm talking about the national debt. That national debt. You're
Yeah.
talking about your debt's based on retirement and social services.
No, I'm talking about the national debt.
That
That
national debt not
that
owned by the American people. Most of that debt is owned to 1.2 billion to China, about a trillion, about $1.5 trillion to Japan. So
yeah.
no, that's owned by billionaires all around the world.
Well, and it's owned by our government and our people, and it was borrowed from our Wall Street market, and it's going to get paid back to our Wall Street market. Now, if you want to know how to turn a
It don't,
financial crisis and a
it don't have,
nightmare
we could have
into
it.
a paradise,
What if
I'd
we
be
owned
the
our own?
guy to talk to.
What if we owned our own bank? What if we funded our own research, funded our own society with our money? Why should we
So
borrow money from a private bank, a bunch of private bankers, in other words, billionaires? Why should we borrow money from them to do anything? No, it's our money. We'll create our own money and we'll have a bank. We don't
that,
need it.
that's why we need to take 8 years and pay off this national debt and quit
No, we don't need
borrowing
to pay it off.
altogether.
All we do is cancel it. It's done. There is no paying it off. And we're going to take care of our people. We're going to take our money. We're going to have a national bank. We're going to own our own money and we're going to use it to rebuild America.
Because everyone who's ever 191 other countries just went through this with financial crisis, and everyone in those countries is dying because they don't know how to handle that kind of crisis. They don't know how to handle those finances. They don't know how to handle the portfolios that these people created with all this debt, and it's leaving people in their graves. It takes serious intelligence to know how to handle that without killing off your entire population. And this is unanimously what I get from all of the candidates is that because they themselves, as well as the establishment, don't know how to handle the national debt crisis, that their plan ultimately is to kill off all of mankind because it's the easiest answer.
Well, they know how to handle it. Absolutely, they know how to handle it. They're the ones that created it on behalf of their funders. They know exactly how to handle it. They're the ones that created it.
But that's the thing is they don't know how to handle it, so their answer is the same as your answer, which is to just run everything into the dirt because there's no other solution. But there is another solution. It's called national debt reconciliation, and it can solve our problems and turn our nightmare into our paradise if we do it correctly. But see, they don't have the intelligence to deal with national debt
They're
reconciliation.
very well not to have the intelligence. They're paid to not have the intelligence. In fact, what they're paid to do is divert us from having it too.
Exactly. And so because
I
it's not
haven't
common,
never talked
I
like
had to go I had to go to corporate college and grow up in think tanks to have this kind of knowledge and information. But so the national debt reconciliation experiment is one that they have never run. That is something that you might want to know.
if I'm
So
elected, I never will.
they have 191 examples in the last 3 years where an allied or connected country to the Democrats and Republicans financially collapsed because of exactly the solutions that every candidate is giving me. And I'm trying to communicate with them like, no, you have to understand these countries are collapsing because things don't work that way. These financial situations have to be managed in a specific way, And we can't do it because of the election system. We have to take certain action or we all die.
Well, you know what the United States does to third world countries? We walk in there, we put them in a situation where they have an unpayable debt, and then the World Bank or goes in and says, okay, that's all right. We're going to restructure your debt. We're going to let you get out of it. But here's the deal: you're going to let our corporations go in and steal all your resources. We're going to now own that. And oh, by the way, those left wing guys you got in your government, we're going to get rid of them. They got to go. We got
Yeah,
guys
or right wing or whoever.
they're going to make it real easy, grease the skids so that our corporations can get right in there and take over your operations. We're going to own your land. We're going to own your resources. How's that sound for a deal, guys? And they go, so what it really is, what it amounts to is like you going down the alley and here's some mafioso guy and he's got a gun to your head. And he said, no, you don't have to give me your money, but if you don't, I'm going to put a bullet through your head. Which one do you want? No,
Right.
what you do is you get rid of the mafioso.
Yeah, you put a bullet in his fucking head.
No, you don't put a bullet in his head. But what you do is you take away his power. You own the government. You don't let them own it. You take it away from them.
Absolutely.
And the way you take it away from them is you organize the working class. See, they're very well organized. The mafia is well organized. They got a hierarchical structure, and the guy at the top, he's the autocrat. He tells them what to do. Kill that guy. Kill that guy. Kill that guy. They go and do it. Right. You go corrupt that country. You take over their government. You put them in debt. Bankers. They tell them what to do. They do it. Right. But at the end of the day, when that doesn't work, they got the gun. In the case of the oligarchy, it's the U.S. military. That's why we have to have 900 bases all over the world that we support.
Yep.
That's the gun. Okay, so that's the guys that rough you up when you don't take the money bribe.
Yep. Well, and I'm past the whole rough me up thing. They failed at that too many times already.
Well, they all got
it look bad.
I mean, basically, we're slaves. Okay, we don't own anything. We don't own anything. Everything we have is rented.
Right.
We make decisions about our capital. We don't own our own money. We don't own our government, and we don't own the means of production. We own nothing.
Right.
That's what we need to organize to change. So, and it starts by owning our government, and that's why you need to get an independent on the ballot and put them in power. And then what you have to do is you have to support him to get rid of every single member of Congress. Clean sweep, get rid of both parties. If they're going to be in there, if they don't pass an amendment that says only publicly funded elections, you move them out, and we put somebody else on a ballot to replace them, like the working class guy that knows what it takes to raise a family.
Right. Well, we have a hell of an argument. 18 U.S.C. Section 2383 prohibits these people from sitting in our offices. What are they even doing here?
That's right. But remember now, as a politician, as you're going to the people, you don't even say that because their eyes are going to glaze over. You start, they don't care. They don't want to know that. What they want to know is what's it going to look like when you're the president.
Well, I think so. Sorry, guys. I think so.
They also run a system that's based off of candidate worship and law worship. They worship the law, and so they're going to try to use the law against you, and you have to know how to use the law against them.
They're going to use everything against me, not just the law. They're going to use everything in their power against me. But you know what? And they can beat me. That's why I have 12 guys standing behind me. If they take me out, there's 4 others behind me ready to take my place.
Right.
You can't.
Or you just make yourself unbeatable. You set everything up in a way that when they do try to beat you, you've already predicted it, and everything they do backfires.
Well, I'm only one guy. It isn't me that makes the difference. Organizing the middle class. That's where the power's at. The power's in the people. What you need to make them understand is that they've got the power. See, they don't believe that. You go talk to anybody and say, "Are you kidding? You out of your mind? You can't do this." Sure, I can, and you can too. All you have to do is change the way you behave. Stop voting for the crooks.
Right.
And put somebody in office that you own.
Right. Well, one of the things that really kind of messes with them about me is I didn't just create a political party. I created a brand. I created a political party with a brand name that represents everyone. And so I created the Granddaddy Party. And historically, they deleted this party from existence on multiple occasions. And if you get into the research behind it, you'll find out that if you wanted a party in control of your White House at this point, it would be the American political party. Just the question is how do we get people past the point of no return? You know what I mean? And so I I figured that out, but
I'm not sure the American people would buy another party. They're not buying the Green Party. They're not buying the Libertarian Party.
right. Well, and
Party, you're part of a tribe, and they don't trust tribes. They think once you're in a
right.
tribe, there's the in tribe, and then there's the out tribe. And if you're not on the inside, well, you're the enemy. I think that's why I ran as an independent, totally independent. Nobody me except if I get elected. The only ones that will own me are you, the people.
Well, and here's the thing: is nobody's buying the third parties. That's not true.
Well,
Everyone's buying the third parties. It's just in the scramble, they're told that they only have two options, and they've never seen a third party that they can vote for.
Well, I think that you could form
sorry, guys.
What?
Sorry, my apologies. So, John, what you're saying is like right to the, like you're grassroots, and you are, you're the person. I agree with you. The more parties, and I apologize, Mr. American, there, the more parties that get involved, the more confused the electorate gets. And everybody is these guys right now that have the manipulation under control. Hi, Paul, by the way, great of you to join us here. Anybody right now that is trying to make sense out of this thing, and John is doing a real good job. I've heard you speak many a times on these spaces, and you're the grassroots. You've got your heart in this. I get it. But the problem is, I don't think, and he nailed it. You don't need multiple parties. I ran for a fringe party that was more conservative than the guys that won the election. The conservatives became basically liberals. The liberals infiltrated the conservative party, and then because the liberal party just disappeared. You guys are in the position right now that people don't really have an identity other than, my parents voted blue and my parents voted red. And that's what's happening right now. And then you put another party in the equation. That you're talking centuries of people being used to being part of one party or another. And it's going to be next to impossible for people to actually embrace anything that's new right now. And I mean, and as much as they should, and the democratic process, it took Poland. They have something like 20 parties right now. It took Poland, and by the way, your constitution is based on the old Polish constitution. So when you're looking at, and it took, by the time they figured out how to create government and how to govern after the Eastern Bloc, quite frankly, and during the Wałęsa days and everything else, it took them a while to embrace, and it took generations. It took younger voters to do this. And I don't know, I can't speak for the U.S., but in Canada, people are born they're either born red, blue, or orange here. And that's just the way it is. And if you put in another party, they just look at that as fringe and a waste of a vote.
Well, in this case, the American political party is extremely fringe. So it's been deleted from history on multiple occasions. It only appears as a psyop, and usually connected to the Central Intelligence Agency or national security stuff. So, in retrospect, the American political party over the last 3 years has helped stabilize the state of affairs in the United States, both psychologically, politically, and otherwise. A lot of people have seen me on social media, seen me in those battles, and seen how much the government really comes down on me. But to To say the least, I've saved the United States more than once. I've saved every life in this country at least once. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
well, I applaud you. You know, you know, it's you know, it's I hear your passion, and I hear your, your love of what you're doing. But I had the same thought process, and then I ran for a fringe party, and then I knew what happened, and then basically, you know, and then I looked at the electorate up there. John's going to have quite a challenge out there, you know. But the one thing that's going to get him by, it's him personally,
right.
him
Well,
and his
and
care and his testament to his character. That's what's going to get him,
right.
to where he needs to get.
Well, and that's the thing is this isn't just something that we're just doing. We're in this whether we win it or lose it. We're in a fight for a reason.
Yeah. Do you mind bringing Paul in? Because I'm going to have to be taken off, and I've heard uh, Paul's a good speaker there. And John, what are your thoughts? I apologize for interrupting here.
Oh, well, I'm I've got a lot. Did you hear a friend of mine, one of the people that support me, he went to the Smithsonian Museum gift shop. Did I read that characteristics to you that he found on a plaque there?
No, no. What was
Listen,
that?
tell me if you can identify. Now, think of yourself as either a libertarian or a Green Party guy. You could be either one. But listen to
Mm-hmm.
this, see if you can identify with it. Powerful and continuing nationalism, disdain for human rights, identification of enemies as a unifying cause, rampant sexism, controlled mass media, obsession with national security, religion and government intertwined, corporate power protected, labor power suppressed, disdain for intellectualism and the arts, obsession with crime and punishment, rampant cronyism and corruption, fixed elections, supremacy of the military, unaccountable war criminals, imprisonment and murder of political opponents, emulation and alliances with other despots. That was in the Smithsonian Museum gift shop, a plaque, and you know what the word at the top of that plaque said?
No, I'm almost afraid to ask.
Fascism.
Wow.
Those are the characteristics of fascism. So does that sound familiar to you?
Totally. It's happening right now. We can't, you know, it's happening. I'm it's happening at the dinner table when you have a kid in university or college telling you that you're white entitled, and that you got to watch what you say when you're eating a meal with them, and those are the people that you love. Isn't that fascism?
I'm not sure I understood where you're going with that.
So I'm talking about my kids when they went to university or
Okay.
college. So all of a sudden
They were told privilege.
they were told by their professors that I'm white entitled.
Well,
That they came from privilege, that I'm entitled, and that the problems right now are me.
well,
Not
yeah.
yeah.
Let me put that in perspective for you. I'll tell you where the professors will come from. That may be the way your kid interpreted it. I'd like to talk to the professor that said it, because here's the stats in the United States of America. If you're a black family, you have 30% of the wealth of white families in America. That's just a fact. That's a stat. And so now, when you talk about privilege, if you're talking about relative privilege, yes, relatively speaking, the whites do have advantages. And
Well,
I
I don't believe any of that what she said. But and then what I did, because I know the provost of the university. So I went in and I said, where do you learn such things? And one time I actually went in and I did it legitimately without my daughter knowing. And I sat in on her lecture, and I never saw a bigger Bolshevik teaching her. Right.
okay, yeah.
So that's the problem. The problem is that you have these people that are shaping people's minds with really nothing backing them up. That university that she went to, I couldn't afford to attend, and I didn't want my parents to get into debt for me to be there. Okay, but I made
Yeah,
sure
that's a
that
BIPOC. That's a BIPOC thing. It's a collection of foreign
hey,
nationals in
hey
our
Paul,
colleges.
join us in there, buddy. Press your mic on thing.
So basically, BIPOC came in and they took a version of politics from our prison system and they twisted it all up. In prison, the whites sit with the whites, the blacks sit with the blacks, the Mexicans sit with the Mexicans. It's voluntary segregation. It's a militarized system, and it works for them. But what they did was they took it out of the prison system, put this racist tweak on it of their own, and turned it into some mind wash that they want to teach children about critical race and how it's not okay to be a white person or something. And it really is racist. It's more racist than the racism was.
Well,
It is.
that's the problem. The people,
I,
and I don't really want to get into this racism thing, all this other stuff. I mean, we're human beings. I love all walks of life.
yep.
So it's, I don't even want to go there. I've been called a racist and an Islamophobe, you name it. I've been called everything. At the end of the day, you're not going to call me that because I've got, every right to express myself. But don't teach the innocent people that are that are spending their, just like John said, spending their life savings or their parents' life savings to put you in that university or that degree program or whatever they're on. And don't start, teach them how to think, not what to think.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I blame that shit on a faction that's connected itself to the Democrats.
Uh,
And
but that's the problem. The problem is today where, the institutions are teaching kids how, not only how to think, but what to think, and that's
right.
none of their
Well,
business.
and then telling them what gender they have to be instead of accepting them for the gender that they are. It's like
Okay,
they're
so when
children. You're not supposed to genderize children. That's molestation.
so no, but I'll tell you, when I sat at that lecture, you know what my daughter told me when we were at the dinner table that night? Dad, you shouldn't have been there. I might flunk the class, and I need this class. And then
Right.
that was when we established whatever happens in that class doesn't show up into this house, and we don't speak like that professor does at this dinner table.
We really need incomes to go up, and we need families to be able to afford to take care of themselves and their children. And we need to put homeschooling back on the table where parents can afford to be there to teach their children and have hands and eyes on that computer that shows them what their kids' curriculum is. We don't need teachers teaching kids to touch themselves and poop in kitty litter boxes in the classroom. We need kids to learn math, reading, writing, arithmetic, science, and how to get a job, you know, stuff like that. We,
Well,
we don't need to be teaching them our radical political ideologies and crap like that. And the way the public education system is, it's great to go send your kid off to a babysitter 8 hours a day, but what you're getting in return is not what you asked for.
well, we do need to teach them how to think, like Walt said. I mean, that's the
Not,
key. Teach them how to
not,
think, not
not,
how.
not what to think, and that's the problem. They're spending more
Yeah,
time
yeah,
on what to think.
yep. That's right.
Yeah, basically mind control, and it really, a lot of this shit comes from it. I do really blame this crap on the Democrats for allowing this kind of psychological. They use the field of psychology in a way that fucked them up, and what they do is they fuck everyone else up in return. And people just need to stand up and say, you know what, you're not going to teach our kids nothing no more.
Steve,
We'll teach our kids,
what you,
and if you come over here to try to take our kids, we got something for you, motherfucker. You know?
what you just said, what you said is the Democrats. Remember, there's only one party. See, that's how we divide us. That's the divisive thing. Now, what you
Well, the way they split it, you know, one side is radical in one way, and the other side is radical in the other way, even though they're both the same group, the same, you know, ownership and all that. They just, the way they split the pie on you, it just,
right, but don't fall in the trap of half the people turn you off. And we can't have that. You can't win a class war if you're going to divide the working class. Hey, you might want to bring Paul in. Did you invite him to listen? Or
Yeah, yeah. Actually, that's what I suggested. I don't know if he's shy. Maybe he's playing shy here. Hey, Paul, we're gonna wait until you get in. We're not gonna stop. We want you to be part of this, buddy. Any any luck?
but I keep sending him his, there he goes. He got his request in
Okay,
there.
you
All right,
drug
there
me
you
up
go.
kicking and screaming, but what you're
Yeah, no,
talking
it's there's a
about,
problem getting in and out, American.
yeah.
It's very there's something weird on the thing. I'm not surprised that we're having trouble. It took me 3 times to get back in after I get kicked out. So there's got to be they must be doing something.
Yeah, they're doing some
That's why
tweaking.
there's not
Yeah.
people here. There should.
Yeah.
I mean, with
Well,
John, there's at least 60 to 70 people.
yeah. Call me new to this, but, you know, um, I've been sending the requests out, and for some reason, you guys have been having
Follow them
trouble.
around.
So.
It's got to be. Hey, did we get lucky?
Yeah. Now, the what you're saying, Walt, is the same thing I did with mine. Is that I taught them to be critical thinkers while they were in high school before they even got to college, and then they figured out that they had to work within the system that they were dealing with to be successful or to achieve, or if they go somewhere where the thought is not like conservative but very liberal, they play the role of being liberal. It's a sad thing that they can't be who they are, but they have
But
to. That's how they
but but,
approach
but
it.
I was uh, ours is a conservative household. So
Hmm.
as soon as they hit the university, they became liberals, and they voted for the prime minister that we have right now. And right now they're lost. They don't know what to do after everything they've witnessed. And I'm not one of those "I told you so" dads, right? I just, the part that I thank God for is that they now are thinking for themselves and they're not kind of caught up. It takes a while for their eyes to open up, right?
Yep.
And it's because of everything that you and I have done.
Hmm.
We didn't banish them or do whatever, but I just politely said, I love that you're looking at a different point of view that's in this house, but don't start making me behave like it. Don't start judging me,
Yep. Yeah. Yep.
right?
I always ask them why.
Yeah, don't punish me for loving you,
Yeah, I think that's the American
right?
political party. Is,
So
you know, I got 22 years in the system, and I have an expertise in their laws and policies, and I know exactly what to do. I know exactly how to solve these problems.
those
I've been
problems have
I've
to be
been trained
solved.
by them for 20 years to know how. But
American,
the
these
problem,
problems have to be these problems have to be solved at the home. And the problem
yeah,
that we have right now, people are too busy
absolutely.
trying to put food on the table. They don't have time for these type of conversations without them
Right,
being argumentative.
well,
right,
remember,
no
guys,
doubt.
that we have.
Well, but that's the problem I have is I can have the expertise to fix the problem, but you can lead a horse to water and you can't make it drink.
Right. Well,
Mm.
remember, you can't make.
Even
So,
though I could be
John,
providing the
so,
solution for every
sorry,
American, you
American,
can't convince it. You
John's
can't
trying to
convince
get through.
them.
American, John's trying to get through. For some reason, when you talk, we're all go ahead, John. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, you got to be careful when you say I'm this and I'm that, because even using a word like I'm conservative and I'm liberal, the minute you say I'm conservative, remember everybody doesn't understand what conservative means. So in half the population's mind, the minute you say that, you're excluded. You're part of the other side, right?
Yeah, you're canceled immediately.
Right. Exactly. And they don't hear another word you said. So if the
Yeah.
goal is to unite the working class, we have to avoid these terms that are shoved down our throat that define us, put us in a box, separate us from everyone else. You
That we
have
were born that we were born into. I agree.
all right, but you see, out of habit, we still do it automatically.
I just did it.
You just did it, and see, and that's the thing. So we have to retrain ourselves to unite people. And if you say any of those divisive words, you turn them off, and as soon as they get turned off, they dig in, and you can never change their mind.
Yeah.
And
I,
the goal for us is to unite the working class. You have to listen, be respectful, and don't put yourself in a box and don't put them in another box. Because the minute you do, you alienate people. That's why the media, corporate media, controls the messaging, because they keep throwing out, oh, the left and the right and the red and the blue. They want the boxes. They want to create as many in the black and the white and the yellow and the red and the Chinese and the you know they like to put as many boxes. So the first rule of a class war or any war whatsoever is divide and conquer, and that's how they do it. So you need to train everyone to unite one another, unite with people. Remember, we all have the same interests, and we need to discuss the many ways to get there. Don't ever say I have the answers, because if you say I have the answers, you just locked everybody else out, because they think, what are you, brilliant? What do you got, or what? No, you don't have the answers. What we need to do is say, I don't have all the answers. I've got some ideas. Let's discuss this. Let's get our collective wisdom together. Let's come up with the options. And we're going to have 3 or 4 options, and then let's discuss the options. Let's analyze them. Let's break them down. Let's find out what the pros and cons of each one is. And then collectively, democratically, we'll make a choice. That's the way to approach it. If you do anything but that, you're shooting yourself in the head, no matter where you're at in the political spectrum.
Wise words. Wise words. That's why I came in last.
Yeah, I call them communist trigger words, but that's because even the word communist is a trigger word.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the definition of fascism, which you just read, that was interesting.
So you talk to the way you talk to your kids. You talk to them with love and respect. That's how
Yeah.
they'll. And you have to act that way too. You have to treat them with dignity, right? If you go and you attack them, you've got to do it this way. I've got the answer. You know what they do? You're never going to change their mind. They're going to dig in, and even if they come to believe that you were right, they'll go the other way just out of spite.
Yeah, they won't admit that you were right, just despite that whole situation, just to prove that they were right.
Right, even if they learn it, right? So that is the key to uniting people. You can't attack. You can never attack people that you're trying to change their mind. If you want, the only way we're going to unite is change people's minds, because they're into the I'm dug in and I know I've got the minds and everything.
They'll feel threatened.
Right. So if you want to change your kids' behavior, you approach them in a loving way and you say, "Hey, let's discuss this now. How's this working out? What about this impact, or what about that? Have you thought about how this is going to affect your life, and how's that?" That's the way you approach it with your kids, right? You don't go in and say, "Hey, listen, I've been around for a long time. I've got all the answers. God damn it! When are you going to learn how to listen?" So there it is, telling them how to obey.
You sound like my parents.
Yeah, if you want to, yeah.
And I agree with him. That's why I don't lead with the answers. I lead with the problems, because ultimately you can't provide somebody else the
See,
answer for them
I've
on a
been
voluntary basis,
I've been
and
taught is
unless
not to
they
call
come
the
to that.
word American. I've been taught that when I was actually running the first time, is never use the word problem. Always use the word issue. that's the
Yep.
we must speak to the issues, right, Paul?
Yep.
Right.
It's like, when I get in with mine, I always did the why. I always went to the root. And I'd say, well, there's got to be a root to wherever you came up with this. So someone has taught you this information. Have you verified that that information is correct? Are you taking them at full value? And then that's where I would get them to dig, and I'd say, okay, there's always going to be two sides, and you have to pick one, and one's going to be closer to the truth. And I said, you have to search for that truth and ask why. And that's where they found their way. And as for like what you're talking about, yeah, I ran in a supervisor's race, and I recommended to consolidate all emergency and school systems in a county of 60,000 people. And it would save $7 million. But the biggest argument was over taxation and who would control it, and could never get them to think beyond that. But I said, but we'd be saving $7 million a year. I mean, it makes sense. And that's where I fought that battle of trying to get them to, see there's value to think outside the box, but they don't want people to think outside that box. So,
I think
Yeah,
that's
Paul.
the thing with the American political party is all of it is created content. None of it is basic inside the box. None of it was information or knowledge that was just handed to me. It's all created. So all the way through the founding of the American political party, the brand is a creation. You know
Yeah, I'd
what I mean?
like to address something Paul said. Paul, when it comes to your kids, I want to take this down the path of human psychology for a minute, so that I think I can make my point. The cognitive human psychology, cognitive being how we think, right? Our thought process. The basic premise behind cognitive human psychology is we don't act in accordance with the truth, but rather the truth as we believe it. So the question is, where do we get our beliefs from? When you tell your kids somebody put that in your head, that's actually technically incorrect. We build our own beliefs with our own thoughts. So somebody can put a lot of things out there until you say, I agree, it's not the truth. But your beliefs are formed and are built with your own thoughts. So the first thing you have to teach your kids, you're responsible for your beliefs. They didn't come from me, and they didn't come. I'm an influencer, right? Your mom is an influencer. Your teachers are influencers. But your
yeah.
belief came from your thoughts. That makes them responsible. So when you start talking to them, you don't talk to them as if somebody else has power over their beliefs. They own them. They got to be
Mm.
responsible. Now they know they're going to act in accordance with their beliefs. So when they act something and do something that's inappropriate, what you say to them in a loving way is something like, gee, that didn't work out too well, did it? And they go, no. And you go, I think you're better than that. Let's explore. So that's the way you approach that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
And
that's the problem I'm having with the FEC right now is everybody thinks and acts from the box that they come from. Their thoughts and their actions, like you said, is limited to the scope of their knowledge and experience from within inside of their box. And the problem I have with the FEC and everyone else is that everyone keeps trying to shove me into their box, and I'm not I'm not operating within the confines of any of their boxes. I'm operating within the confines of my own box, which I created, which is separate from, the boxes that they're used to or they understand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and if you want to influence their box, if you want to move them one way or the other, you can't shove them out of their box. What you have to do is you have to have an open, honest, loving discussion, respectful. You have to teach them with dignity and respect, and then you can discuss the issue. So you don't personalize it. Never take anything personal. If somebody does something, it's not because it's their problem. It's not yours. Don't personalize it. Don't think it's about you. It's never about you. It's about them. And what you need to do is when you see someone doing something like that and approaching you that way, rather than personalizing, go, just ask them, well, why is it that you believe that? Where did that come from? Well, you get them back to where they understand, their beliefs are their choice. They could believe anything in the world, and people do. Some people believe in flying saucers going to come down and pick me up any minute, and I mean,
Right.
and, and they do believe anything. But here's the key: they act in accordance with their beliefs. So when you want to know what somebody believes, you don't listen to what they say. Words and rhetoric are only 30% accurate in analyzing what people actually believe. If you want to know what they believe, you watch what they do. So
Right.
Biden, on the one side of his mouth, says, I want to protect the American people, and then everything he does doesn't protect them, right? Don't listen to what he said. Watch what he do. We act in accordance with our beliefs. That's the key element of cognitive human psychology.
Right.
It's the
Well,
one
and then
thing.
what I do is I live by a code where I don't let people put me in their box, and I don't
Yeah,
let people write
you,
my narrative. You know what I mean?
they can't put you in any box. Only you can. That's the point. You build your beliefs with your own thoughts until you
That,
accept what they say.
well, the way our system works is everyone tries to put everyone in boxes and treat them a certain way based on the box they're put in. And so, if you're a criminal, you get treated like a criminal. If you're a rapist, you get treated like a rapist. If you're a rich guy, you get treated like a rich guy. If you're privileged, you're given privileges. If you're poor, you get your neck stepped on by a cop. You know, so it really kind of is how the class based system works is basically by boxes. If I can bias you and put you in a category, then you're in the box that I've created for you. You know? And so they will call you a criminal. They will call you a sex offender. They will say you did this. They will say you did that to try to get you into the box that they want you in, and it has nothing to do with you.
Well, what
Yeah.
most people don't realize is that they can't put you in any box. Only you can put you in a box. Until the day you said, so Paul said, I'm a conservative. Okay, great. There's a self image. I'm a conservative. Okay, so you would say to Walt, how did you become a self conservative? Well, my dad was a conservative. That's like, oh, I'm a Democrat. My dad was a Democrat. My grandfather was a Democrat, and his grandfather. We're all Democrats, and we've always been Democrats, and we always will be. See, there's where you bought into other people's beliefs, right? It isn't. It doesn't become you until you say, in reality, potential. To
The same is true with
we can be everything here, and you can be liberal there, and you can do anything you want, but you choose. You find nobody finds who you are. Nobody puts you into a box. You that puts you into a box.
Well, the one thing that I've always done is when I ask why, and I get them to understand that how did we get to where we're at, and where did we come from, to understand how that foundation or that argument occurred. Like, Marx came along in the 1800s and he introduced, a theory, and that theory was applied. But then how can you turn around and say that's a good system, or believe that it's a good system, because it can't be implemented. There's no way, because of the human nature. You're going to have the conquest in the human nature will always be there, and they will use any means to do it. We used to do it where we would battle each other all the time, but in today's world it's kind of more of a political battle and economic, and it's like, understand where the past is to see where you are today, where your future will be. And that's how, I tried to raise them to view those things and ask why. But at the same time, the influencers that are out there will influence them. They'll go through a maturing phase. And when they get to a certain point, because like with political parties, I separated, 20 something years ago, because I did not see the value in them anymore, because I saw them as a single entity acting like on a basketball court, but there really was just one team. So, yeah.
Just to one point you made there, Paul, the Karl Marx's theory has never been applied, by the way. People think
Yes,
that,
correct.
yeah, people
Correct.
or Soviet Union applied Marxist principle. They did not. What they did is they had state capitalism. What Karl Marx talked about was worker ownership. In other words, the workers own the corporations in which they work, or the industries, or the businesses, or the enterprise, whatever you want to call it, so that the workers themselves are the owners. You don't have, and then they appoint people to administer and to direct and to help manage certain aspects of the business. They appoint their own board of directors. They vote on it. Each worker has one share. So he has one share of equity. You got 100 workers, you each have 1/100th of the equity of the organization in which you work, and you vote. That's a voting share, and you elect the people you want to do different jobs. You set the pay scales. You elect a HR department. They sit there and say, okay, here's the different skills, and someone with this level of skill gets paid X, and someone with that level of skill paid Y. You can bet your bottom dollar that an employee-owned corporation is not a corporation that they'll say, "Hey, to increase profit, let's outsource our jobs to China or Mexico." They aren't going to do it, are they? And they also aren't. Oh, they're not going to pay their CEO, um, you know, uh, 1,000 times what the average worker makes, and they're not going to pollute the communities in which they live. But when the owners are sitting in a big office tower in New York, they don't care if they pollute some town in Ohio. Why would they care? They don't care if they close down and move it to Mexico. And, so that's the point. So Karl Marx was talking about the people directly owning the enterprise. So it's never been implemented. And people are confused by that. They think, oh, yeah, communism doesn't work. I'm going to tell you, communism has never been tried.
I'll accept that argument. The one thing is that the it's like with things like that have not been tried, that have been dressed by a lot of others and used, like, with Lenin and how they transcended into a totalitarian state. Same thing with Mao. And they introduced components of capitalism, but yet, like property ownership, the one thing that the United States has is that you have a pseudo false property ownership, because at any time, if you don't pay your taxes, um, you know, they'll take it away from you. But in the early years, in the beginning, you contributed to the local schools and you had your kids going there. Businesses contributed to it. Wasn't a structured entity. So they centralized, and the centralization of a lot of things when they should be decentralized is I think, part of the compounding issue, because the authority continues to get stronger and stronger at the top, which then dictate everything and how it operates and how it has to be funded. So then you have to be forced to be a part of it. Whereas to me, you should be allowed to have true ownership of your property and of your labor, and you contribute. And you either contribute through transactionally, if you go out and you spend your money, you have to pay extra then based on the purchases, which then would fund all those operations. But because of the way it's structured now, they don't want to do that, because then that takes the ability of them to misuse the system, which is what's happened over the last 120 years or so. So, it's sad. And the economic change, when they went to the Federal Reserve, corrupted a lot of the system. That was the start of the snowball. And then you had political choices throughout that century and a little bit that added pieces that cancered the true nature of what the Constitution and what the principles of America really were. So it's kind of like, you know, that's when you try to argue those points, I always look back and look at the beginning with the intent and try to be an originalist on any subject, because that way you understand how it's either been corrupted because man has changed the perception of it, or it's evolved or grown and there's been new discoveries and they knew that it needed to change. It's like a maturing process, but the maturing of the American system has cancered versus being fruitful in my book. So, because it's human nature. Yeah.
Well, my thoughts. Can everybody hear me? Hello.
Yes.
We hear you.
So my thoughts is, I think we've mistaken administration for leadership, and I think we're being over administrated right now. And the university's just pumped out all these administrators. I'm seeing what's going on here with the healthcare system. There is more offices for administrators than there is beds for sick people.
Bingo. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, so I
How
don't know,
many
John. What's your
administrators
thought?
does it take? to screw in a light bulb.
Yeah, 10.
Yeah, all of them, and somebody's got to find the ladder.
Now,
Yeah.
Paul, one fallacy that they push out at us is that, the problem is that we're humans. It's our human nature. But if that were true, we would all be killers or we would all be priests or no, actually, we have the potential to do and be anything. People are not the problem. Um, you know, the system itself is the problem. So people are manipulated by different pressures, economic pressures, social pressures. These are systemic things, right? So if human beings were the problem, then my kids would be exactly like your kids. They're not, and they're all human. The difference is the way they were conditioned, the way they were brought up, the way they were taught to think. So we should use our understanding of human sciences, human psychology, and other sciences, and we should utilize that to the benefit of all of us. Right now, all of that stuff is, is owned by a very tiny group, and they manipulate everything else. So, I kind of, I don't really go along with the idea that the problem is people. I think the problem is the system, and that's why I don't blame people for acting inappropriately. Like even the politicians that are in power, I could blame them personally, but that's not going to change anything. Because as soon as they leave, there'll be another guy behind them that does the same thing. Because, well, guess what? That's acting in your own interest. The guy that builds the missiles or the atomic bombs, he doesn't necessarily, he's doing what he has to do. I got to survive. I need a job. And here's my job. Somebody's offering me good money to build this missile. And then guess what? If you don't blow up that missile, you're out of work. So you have to blow it up so that you can build another one. So it's planned obsolescence, right? That's the name of the game. And that's the way the system works. So are you going to blame people for doing things that are not beneficial to humanity? No, you can't, because it's the system that makes them do it. They have no choice or they don't survive. If I build a car, I might have the technology to build a car that goes 5 million miles without an oil change. I might have that technology. You're never going to build that car, because if you do, you'll never have a return customer and you're going to be out of business. So you have to build junk, which means that you have to further mine the earth. You got to take more resources. You have to, and you pollute in the process. So, the rational system, given the technology we have today, a 21st century transportation system would have autonomous vehicles at the local level. You could order whatever kind of vehicle you want to move you, your products, your gear, and it would take you to either local bus stations or train stations, and it would be all powered by nuclear fusion, the kind of energy that's so dense that it would be too cheap to actually even meter, and it ought to be a public utility. When it comes to ownership, we talk about property. There's two types of property. There's personal property, and I separate that from private property. Private property is what capitalists own. It isn't their toothbrush. It isn't their TV set. It's not the home that they sit in. It's not the table that they sit down and eat at with their family. That's personal property. Then there's private property. The way I look at that is that's property that capital buys, and they look for a return on investment. Okay. So in the good old days, before there was capitalism, all of the property belonged to God. It was God. You didn't create it. You didn't build it. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to God. And that was the days of feudalism. So when a feudal estate went bankrupt, all that property, and because it was mismanaged by the Lord, um, was the employer of the day. So they had mismanaged companies too. Went back to the church. That property went back to God. And then God would assign a new Lord to manage it properly. So when you think about property and ownership, I think about it a little differently than some people based on that history.
I got you. Yeah, that's still, decentralization of the structure. It's like the Constitution has a clear defined representation in it, and um, they hold it to a certain number, and they've increased that population instead of altering the Constitution and amending it to allow them to do that. They have allowed themselves to do that. Uh, by having that, you know, gave the ability in the beginning for the people to directly interact with their representation. The altering of the senators representing the state, taking that away and putting it in a populist mode impacted things. And then income was not asked other than to pay for, like previously, for war, and it was temporary because they knew it was unconstitutional until they passed that amendment that said they could do it. Um, and I kind of agree with you on the personal property and family property. I agree with you on those things. And then if you're a capitalist and you're creating industry, then that's a completely different animal of ownership and how all that's manipulated. But the original system was set up to be close as pure as possible with some taintedness, with the labor structure, having slavery and the changes of that. But that would eventually have been weeded out. But, they ended up going to blows because they couldn't find that compromise. And I think that's where the corruption began. And from that point on, it has just flowered. And when they saw that they could take advantage of the system for their own benefit, and you have to bring moral nature into it, the moral part of the human nature. And if you don't have that in the system, then you'll be like Russia or China, where life is not valued, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Well, not Russia now, but the Soviet
Yeah.
Union when it was under that. Excuse me. So,
Yeah, well, during the Civil War, I mean, they came to blows, and the political system couldn't solve the problem because the underlying structure was capitalism. And capitalism demands that you have profits. So don't forget, half of the population, their livelihood depended on slavery. So the political system can't solve that. Nobody's going to give up their livelihood. Hey, I need this. This is how I make my living. And I can't do it without the slaves. So the reason they came to a blow, not that, so it wasn't a political failure. It worked exactly the way capitalism is supposed to work. This is my economic interest, and you're trying to take it away. They couldn't come to the political system, couldn't work that out. They couldn't figure out a way to allow those people to continue to live the lifestyle that they felt they earned, even though they inherited it, most of them. But so the underlying problem is the economic system. And if you think about capitalism at the very personal level, what it involves at the very root is two people. Um, and so it's an exchange of goods or services. So on one side, you have a guy that has something that he wants to sell, and his interest is maximizing profit. So he wants that transaction to work in his favor. That's what he tries to do. On the other side, there's a guy who wants to buy something cheaply. So he too is fundamentally wants to make the transaction work in his favor. So it's not a transaction they're either of them are concerned about the common interest. They're concerned about themselves. And they have to be because it's the way the system works. So Socrates, when he looked at markets, he said immediately he recognized this is antisocial because at the very base of a market are these two people and there's a competition and a tension for self-interest. Now, that, individuals, if you're working your self-interest, you're not going to get anything accomplished. You have to cooperate and collaborate. We didn't build beautiful skyscrapers, and we didn't build a national highway system, and we didn't build the Hoover Dam through competition. We built it through collaboration and cooperation, a whole lot of people working together. That's how you get things done. The Hadron Collider was built by thousands of scientists from hundreds of countries speaking dozens of different languages. That's taking cooperation and collaboration to the level, and everybody's going to benefit from learning about the reality of nature, which is what the collider is all about. So so it's the underlying economic system that drives this antisocial behavior, and so that's where we have to address it. And so if you want, so the other thing, the economic system fundamentally, you have things that need to be done on one side, And then you got workers on the other side that are going to do it, workers and resources, right? So you want to mobilize those workers and resources to meet the needs of the society, whatever they need to be done, like the infrastructure projects, all that stuff. Our system has failed to do that. Our economic system, when you get laid off, what do? They put you on unemployment. So in other words, you're losing your skills, you're not doing anything, but all those basic needs are still there needing to be met. But we don't, this system doesn't work that way because it goes to self-interest, and not self-interest of everybody, but self-interest of the people who have the money and the power and are doing the transactions. So that's why our system is failing fundamentally. Now, the political system should be, nothing should be sacred, including the Constitution. In fact, the beauty about the Constitution, it was written to be changed. So there's ways to amend it. That's the real beauty of it. Because, life in the 21st century is nothing like it was in the 17th century or 18th century, when these things were devised. And so, there were things that they didn't even consider. And now when we start talking about AI, you concentrate the power of AI, nobody, every human being is going to be replaced by automation and artificial intelligence. There'll be nobody that's safe. How do you deal in a world like that? Will our capitalist system work? I don't think so. It's going to work very badly for 99.9% of the people. It's the 0.0000001% that's going to end up owning all of that and managing it and controlling it. And if that happens, we're all doomed. And so there are no sacred cows. Everything has to be open for discussion. And you need open, public, transparent government that brings people in, brings people together, not separates people. So the political system we have now is designed to keep people separated based on their own perceived self-interest. And that works out very well for the oligarchy and maintaining the status quo.
Yeah, and on the AI component, you can look at BlackRock. They have a Aladdin AI that's 29 years old, started out. And I think about 15, 20 years ago, they started allowing it to trade. And now it actively trades. And also, they sell that service to like Vanguard and several others. And that's, to me, that's a demonstration of it'll be it'll be who controls those first, and then eventually there will be multitude of different AIs, which in turn will, I don't know if it's called fighting, but it would be to position themselves to be the primary AI. And, it's kind of like sovereign AIs. There'll be a multitude of really craziness that goes on in that realm, and everybody below it will be either standing for a handout or, the universal basic income type thing, or, that kind of thing. And that will, I just see that there will be a separation. There will be humanists that will not want that part of that technology, and there'll not be a mutuality between the two, like you're talking about with the government and the economic system. Is you'll have that same separation because one one doesn't think and is not human, and the other is actually humans. And and but that's beyond our lifetime. But it's that's the threat, and that's where the human comes into play of how do they manage all those things, and how do they do it where it's balanced, and getting balance and fairness. And you know that's that's a hard thing, because again, that human nature comes into play. When I say human nature, is that yeah, you're gonna have some that are greedy, and some that'll give everything, and some don't care. And it's
Well, when
it's a
you study
quagmire. Yeah.
psychology, you recognize that people that are greedy were brought up to be greedy. They were conditioned in a way that the natural outcome just by following. If I
Yep.
wanted, if I understand human psychology and my goal was to create a greedy person, I can do it. I
Mhm.
can tell you exactly which buttons to push, right? And if I want to
Yep.
produce loving, sharing child, I can do that too. So, applying the science. So don't blame the people. It's the conditioning. And the conditioning is all managed by the owners, right? They own everything. And so they own the messaging. And that's how we get conditions through
Yeah.
propaganda. So, in terms of that, um, now at a practical level, so you said this is not going to happen in my lifetime with AI. I just listened to two of the best hedge fund managers. They're both worth something in the range of $25 billion a piece, and they project that every human being, based on automation and AI, is going to be in years will be dispensable. They'll need none of us in 10 years. Oh, yeah, I think you're going to be around in 10 years. So think about that. And now, at a practical level, as a candidate running for office, I'm building what's called the Ballot Access Coalition. I need state coordinators in every state and regional coordinators and national coordinators in a lot of them. And I need to go right down to the district level. It's an all volunteer thing. It's people that sign up and say, I will help Jon get on the ballot. So you're going to go to your neighbors, you're going to go to your communities, you're going to recruit other people into the system, so that when the state says, Jon, you need in California 200,000 ballot signatures on this petition ballot to get ballot access. But I'm not just building this BAC ballot access coalition for me. I'm building it to get all independents and all third party candidates on the ballot, because the purpose of it is to level the playing field and break the monopoly that the political duopoly has. We have to break that system. We have to own our government. And the only way to do it is to organize us. And so I built a website for this group. And they're going to be self directed, they're going to be self managing, self maintaining, self regulating, and self sustaining. So that's what my campaign has done. So I need people to go out and get everybody they know to join the Ballot Access Coalition and build that foot army on the streets to get us to get people on the ballots who are going to represent us to replace these other two parties. Because you can complain about them all you want, but if you aren't prepared to replace them, if you don't have somebody to step in their place and put them out, then you are not going to change a thing. So at a practical level, my campaign's all about building this organization that's going to set under, and it's going to be completely separate from my campaign, and it's going to survive long after my campaign.
Yeah, I think the political system has been lacking investment. The they get so much money given to them by these corporations, and B, it's never invested towards the benefit of the political system. And so we have a political system with no foundation. And so what you're doing with the BAC is you're building part of the foundation. And that's what I want to do with the track is I want to build the other part of the foundation, which I have the keys to do. And if we can build this foundation, then our elections, our Oval Office will be secured by us. The Democrats and Republicans can fight for as many of the other offices as they want. We have to secure the one we as the American people need to secure as our Oval Office so we can reestablish the executive branch and have a real government.
Well, we may start there, but we need to own the government from the very top to the very bottom. So that's why the Ballot Access Coalition has local people right at the district level, so that we can take and replace parties at every level of government, because they're all corrupt. We need workers there that know what it's like to work for a living. We need regular people that have raised families, that understand what it takes to raise a family. We know what it takes, but these people are never going to serve us. And so they're either going to change and give us what we want. Another, they're going to support the people's agenda and work for the people, or we're going to get rid of them. And threatening to get rid of them is nothing if you don't have the organization to actually do it. So the BAC is the organization I'm building, and you're building the American Party. So
Right. Well, and then I already have the keys for the party. And if you are successful in your operation, what you're doing with the BAC is the foundation for a party. So you can operate universally as the foundation for all of the parties, just like I can do with the track, acting as a universal collector for contributions for all of the parties. So we're talking about establishing a foundation for our presidential elections because of the amount of literal crap that they've put into it to make it so that no one can get through. And that's the crisis that we're going to run into is they can't get through either. And I'm betting you that Joe Biden's office is in a hell of a crunch right now because they tried to do it with the Secret Service and everybody and couldn't get it done. Nobody can get political support right now. Nobody. And it is crumbling with the Democrats or Republicans. Us building this foundation is probably the only hope our nation has.
Yeah, that's right. And the BAC that I'm building, I built all the tools. I built the website. So I've got people working in there that are going to utilize all the technologies. I've got video, digital. I've got video, audio engineers working for me. I got website designers that are working for the campaign. We've got guys that are working in virtual reality and AI that are working in the campaign. So what I need to do is I need to recruit people, and I need every one of my supporters to go and recruit people to bring them in, because we have to unite and man this. It is a class war. But the BAC is separate from, even though I created it and created the tools, it's not a part of my campaign. It's a separate entity. It's free from me. Now I established it because I want to serve my candidacy. But more important than that is that it exists to serve every candidacy from the top to the bottom to replace these parties. So you're right; it is the base of the pyramid.
Right, and then the middle section of the pyramid is what the track is. I think the committees themselves are kind of the peak of the pyramid. The contribution collection goes with the signature collection hand in hand. But if we can set up an operation that allows us to collect that on an annual basis, then we're working with the people to get those collections at all times. So it's not like we're in the boat that the Democrats and Republicans will be in. If we can accomplish this, we won't have to worry about defaulting, which is what we're going to see as a political crisis where everyone's defaulted
Right.
on the elections.
Contributions. You mentioned contributions. I don't need that much because everybody in the BAC and everyone in my campaign, everyone is there out of passion. They're all
Yeah.
volunteers. Everybody works
Well,
on a volunteer basis.
and
So
that's the thing is that it's not that we really rely on money to do all of this. It's that the regulation requires XYZ contributions from each state with the signatures in order to qualify through the ballot access process. So you're right. It's not that we needed money to do all of this. We volunteer to put in this work.
right. So, well, I mean, a campaign does need some money. So I'm not saying to
Yeah.
people, don't give me any money. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying if you can afford to give me some money, give me some money. And because the money goes to, we're going to create events. We got to get out there. We got to spread the word. We got in front of the public. There are expenses, but I'm not going to need billions of dollars. You realize that Joe Biden and Donald Trump each spent $1.2 billion in their
Right.
2020 run. So that's
And,
2.4
and
billion.
that's kind of where from the corporate aspect on the track, I defer. And there's a good reason behind why I defer there. It's because the way contributions work right now, in order to satisfy the state by state requirement, you have to go out and get these signatures and get people to donate you this money. And every year they do this, or every 4 years they do this, and they get all this money, and all this money goes to the party, not to the election. And so in the end, we have basically no election security, no elections enforcement, no nothing, because all the money is always going to this party system and none of them ever invest. So we have a basically an abolished political system where not even the Democrats or Republicans can get through their own processes. And I really do. I foresee a major political crisis coming.
Yeah, government's been completely captured, and not only government, so is the media. It's been concentrated into 6 corporations, maybe, or maybe even less than that now.
Yeah. And I don't think we're gonna. I don't think we're. I think we're in a unique position the way we are, and especially getting together the way we're doing right now. Because when this crisis hits, they're going to be looking at the people that know how to handle this. And from our standpoint, we are some of the people that know how to handle this because they're going to run smack into the election wall.
Well, we're absolutely unique and historic. There's never been anything like what we're trying to do.
Oh no. Oh no. And I don't know to what level the Secret Service might get involved in it. I've already had an assassination attempt against me, so I qualify for Secret Service protection as is.
Well,
Technically, I should.
assuming they're not already involved, I'm pretty sure they are.
Oh, they already know about all of it. Oh, I was right next to Hunter Biden's house when it happened, so I mean, it's not like they aren't aware. But they don't put people into Secret Service protection because it puts them in a 51% category of okay, they're already in Secret Service protection. They're dang near basically already elected. But what I first see is we're going to run into a political crisis. They're going to end up coming to us to solve it because they don't have the intelligence to deal with it, and you're going to see it in the next couple of. We got 3 to 4 more months of primary run up. I think. Well, it's February, so in September, the primaries are run up. So technically, we would have had to have the ballot access portion completed within the next 4 months, 5 months.
Well, I don't have to run in a primary process. I'm an independent.
Well, yeah, but the independent is a party, though, and so, and I think that's one of the things that the independents don't realize is that because you are a party, you have to get all of the independents together and as a caucus and run a primary with all of the other independents.
Well,
That
for the presidency, there's independents in an independent party, but they're
right,
like I'm completely independent. So
right.
other third parties, that's why I called it the Ballot Access Coalition. They can come in, they can help me build this coalition, and they can benefit from it. They can help me build that army of people on the ground. They can unite the American people. But me, as the president, a president to in order to represent everyone in the United States, you can't do it if you're part of a tribe. You have to be completely
Well,
independent.
but that's what the FEC's done to you is you're now in that independent box, and what they're trying to do to me is stick me in the AMP box. I'm not in the AMP box. I'm my own box. I'm the APP, and I got the paperwork to prove it. As soon as I write a check, they're in trouble because they refused to give me my committee ID. But by putting you in that box, you now have to comply with that category. So what they mean by independent is so yes, you're running as an independent, but you're running there's an independent party. So you have to run the primaries for that party.
No, no, you're wrong. I don't do that. I have a campaign number currently through the FEC. I went through the process. My campaign committee has got a campaign committee number, and I've got a presidential number, a P number. Okay, so I'm already through the FEC process. I'm through.
So you have two committees.
Yes, they have their own. Yeah, they got a committee number. I've got a treasurer. Yeah.
Okay. So in order for you to be fully independent with that second committee, it has to be a political party committee, national party committee, and you have to have the corporate paperwork on that committee.
The committee has the corporate. It's a nonprofit corporation, okay, but
Yeah,
a political corporation doesn't have to act like any other corporation. This corporation has to.
but you have the articles of incorporation, and you have the
Well, I had to follow the rules. I had to follow the rules of the FEC. That's the only
right,
rule I have to follow are the rules of the FEC.
right,
Now, we're you know so there's no profiteering. This campaign is not about making a profit at all. It's zero profit. It'll spend. I
I
gets.
I think I may be the first person that's ever done this with the full party establishment plus the candidacy on top of it.
Well, I'm an independent to the same extent that Ross Perot was. That's where I'm at.
Right, but it has to do with the establishment. It has to do with okay, so whoever has the independent party's articles of incorporation is who you would have to get to endorse you because that's the box that you're in at the
The, the,
FEC.
only,
And if you
the only
look next to your
corporation.
name, it says independent. So you're with the independents. So the reason they haven't given me my committee number is because they keep trying to put me into the AMP committee box, the American Party committee box for
Yeah, I already.
for another party that's already dissolved.
You know, I have nothing else to do with the FEC. My campaign is recognized by the FEC. My campaign team,
Right.
right? They're a separate entity. They're a nonprofit, and it's a separate entity. Okay, I'm chairman of the committee, but it's separate from me as a presidential candidate, and then me as a candidate, I have a P number, right? So,
Right.
guys, I'm already through the process of the FEC. I have nothing else to do. The only thing I have to do now is meet all the state requirements to get on a ballot. That's it.
Right. Well, and then that's the case. So if you had the articles of incorporation, the certificate of existence, and the bank account for a political party, then you would be the party, the caucus, and the candidate, and that would put you in the general elections, and you wouldn't have to go through the ballot access process.
No. You're having a party doesn't put you there. Being a presidential candidate, every state has requirements, and I have to meet those requirements state by state in order to do this. Now, some states are, you know,
Right.
have right.
This is the one exceptional circumstance. So, in our elections, the complaint is that there's no way through. Well, there is a way through, but no one's ever done it, and that's what I've done. Is I've bypassed the primary elections process by doing this. Everyone else is bound into a primary elections process by the FEC's regulation. There's no way around it or out of it, and that's why we have to create BACs and tracks, is because of the way that regulations work. So if my party grew, I would automatically have to go through the primary process as well. So if I get elected and my party blows up, next time I go to get elected, I'm going to have to do a primary because all of a sudden I have all these other people I have to answer to.
Right. Well, and I don't answer it anyway. I'm a one person party. I have a campaign committee that's separated from me in terms of finances. They are self regulated, self managed.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a
and
pack.
and they have the bank account, right? I have a treasurer. He manages the money. And so, there's a whole set of rules that they have to follow, FEC guidelines,
Right.
uh, and to operate. But no, I am the candidate. I already have a candidate number. I have no primary to go. Nobody's going to select me, vote for me. I'm it. I've already got my presidential number. I am it.
Right. I have my presidential number. They're jamming me up on the committee number, the party national committee number, because they know what I did and no one's ever done it before.
Yeah, that's a little tricky getting through because the hard part where you run into a problem is where your committee goes and opens a bank account. So you have to go to the bank and you have to prove to the bank that you're a corporation. Once the bank is convinced you're a corporation, you got a secretary, you got a treasurer,
Yeah.
and you're chairman. That's a corporation. and it's nonprofit, and the bank recognizes you as a nonprofit corporation. So the bank account for my campaign committee is the Jon Stasevich for President 2024 campaign committee. That's the name of the organization.
Right. That's the presidential campaign committee. So
Right.
mine's Jonathan Thomas Bailey for president. That's my campaign committee. But the American Political Party Committee is a corporation.
Well, my campaign committee is a corporation. I have no political party.
Right. Well, and that's what puts you inside of someone else's caucus.
No, I'm not in anyone's caucus. I don't have to be in anyone's caucus. I'm
Right.
I
Well, and so they have the independent rule where if you're running and you're not part of someone else's caucus, you have to go through the BAC, the
well,
signed.
if it's a caucus state, if it's a state that has a caucus, right? Then
Mm,
then my BAC group, my team, my ground team, they would be there, right?
right.
And I go through then they would be there to represent my interest in that caucus. That's
Right.
a caucus state, right?
Right.
But most states have most states I just go right to the primary election. I don't have to go through any kind of caucus, and I don't have to go through a primary election. I go right to the general. If I
Yeah.
have signatures, if I get the signatures on their ballot access petition, that the state's going to say, okay, between June and September of we're releasing our petition for you. You get 35,000 signatures in New York. Give us $35,000, and you're on the ballot. And
Yeah.
now the electorate is going to see my name on a ballot and can either vote for me or not vote for me, right? Whatever they choose.
Right.
So, my struggle is building the ballot access coalition, building this. So not only can they get people to my campaign to understand it and to vote for me, but they can do that for others as well. This
Right.
because that organization, the BAC, is separate from me, and it's separate from my campaign committee. It's a
Well,
separate.
and the American Political Party is separate from me, and it's separate from my campaign committee.
Right.
I just run them both. I'm
Right.
global business operations major. I know how to do the books and everything. So it doesn't hurt me none. But
Right. So what I would ask people like, HTLOX, HitLOX, I don't know what that means actually. And Paul, you just spread the word at this point. And if you can, join my ballot access coalition uh, in whatever state you're in or whatever area you're in. You could be a national coordinator, you could be a regional coordinator, or you could be a state coordinator, whatever you desire. So if you contact me, I'll give you the name of the guy that's running the BAC. You contact him, then he'll give you the instructions to get into the website, sign up for whatever you want, and then you'll be part of that team. And you'll be working to get, myself and other independent third party candidates on the back.
I'll take that into consideration. Thanks, man.
Yep.
yeah, I think between you and me, we have all angles of the approach on this wrapped up. Though, like I don't see the Democrats or Republicans or anyone else that's as tuned to this stuff as you and I are.
Well, I'm always successful, whether I win or whether I learn. I'll either win or learn, but I'm always successful. So, the goal, obviously, is to get me in the White House. But if I fail at that, the Ballot Access Coalition goes on, and so does my campaign team. And the next guy can walk in right behind me and pick it up, and possibly a younger guy, but basically same thing. So this is a populist movement. It's a
Yep.
grassroots movement that's going to live long beyond me.
Either you win or you learn to win.
Right, and the way I protect myself is not through any government, Secret Service protection. The way I'm protected is because there's 20 guys behind me to take my place. If they eliminate me, they're going to have to eliminate. There'll be another one coming up and another one coming up. Basically, the same platform, and so they can't kill the idea, and they'll have to kill a whole stream of people, and there'll always be someone
Well,
behind
and
to take my place.
this is the part that's really interesting is they're going to reach the point where what you and me are doing is essentially going to end up becoming their infrastructure of how they have to do it in the future anyways. And there's too many people that are learning about the election system and and that these things are necessary and they're not there. So if they're necessary and they're not there, if the BAC is necessary, if the track service is necessary, and we don't have a BAC or a track, then how do we have somebody in our Oval Office?
Right. Well, what I could see is you remember that the debate stage for the Democrats and Republican, it used to be controlled and managed by the League of Women Voters, and that's when the process was kind of fair. You could have guys like come in and compete, and you weren't stuck to the corporate media giving you 2 seconds to answer a complex question, you know, which is nuts. But they do it because they really don't want you to talk. Okay, so that's a big charade. So I would never even go on the stage because it's all completely rigged to make you fail. I'll create my own stage. But in the future, I could see every state having a league of volunteers, like League of Volunteer, to man ballot access for their states, and
Right.
voice. And the federal government owns the airwaves, so we could take like a C-SPAN, a government airwave, where every candidate can get their voice heard around the clock. People could tune in, listen to all the candidates. You wouldn't have to go through collecting money. You wouldn't have to go through any of that. Everybody gets their voice heard, and then people vote, right?
Right.
So
I, I've been the reason I don't have a formal website is because the level I want to go to on a website with this, I want to integrate all that. If you want to dock into your elections and see what's going on with your elections in 50 states, I want them to be having a meeting like this on the platform. You know, if they're having an election in Tuskegee, I want that to be docked into the platform. If you need to file elections forms or manage elections contributions, I want that to be docked into that platform. You know what I mean? I want to build a platform, a full service and social media platform where people and candidates are able to access their political system through the party's site. You know what I mean? And that way they're able to access the FEC everything, including candidate uh, financial management tools for candidates. It might double as a bank for the parties and candidates at some point as it grows and matures. But growing the the party so that it capacitates the elections for the country is something that they don't do. They run this popularity contest where for as long as they have somebody that's popular, they can ignore all the rules just by winning a popularity contest. And it's just not it's not flying anymore. Right? It's just not cutting it. I think eventually, probably sometime around 2024, either we're going to have a total crisis or we're going to be in a political crisis hacking it out.
I just put my the link to my website in the down below.
Sweet.
So anyone wants to take a look at that and spread it and share it with your friends and contacts and anyone in your circle of influence. Anyway, my treasurer just has been trying to call me for the last 20 minutes while we've been talking here. So I got to get back to him. So I'm going to have to step out, guys. But thank you very
Nice
much.
talking with you.
Yeah, you too, Paul. Nice meeting you. Take care.
Yeah. All right. Take care. Y'all have a good one too. I got to go. Y'all bye.
All right. Bye.
Hey, it's good talking to you guys.